Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Bryan the Duke Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? It is episode number 46 of the Schmoedown Rundown, the official after show for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. It's tournament week, man. It is a sad week for my bracket. We'll talk about that later. But joining me for this jam-packed episode, it's going to be large. Frank Janisch, what's up, man?
Guys, it has been a hell of a first week in the tournament. My brain has been turned into a type of numbers soup because of the 4 matches this week and the amount of data I've recorded from them. I've actually run out of room to store any more info. I've actually been starting to forget older numbers that I've had in my brain for years. I've forgotten my phone number. And just the other day, I tried ordering a cheese pizza from Little Nero's, except that I've even forgotten my address. I'm in rough shape, fellas.
Is that a Home Alone joke?
I thought that was a Matt No shot.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Okay, cool. Also here, Brian Davids. What's up, man?
Aaron, Frank, according to Mark Ellis, this is a podcast. I love how Ellis couldn't remember our names as well as the SK Plus or Schmoes No iTunes feed name, so he went with the old chestnut of how he'd enjoy a pie with any of the SK podcast crew members.
Well, let's talk about some Schmoedown news. Brian, what do you got for me here?
Let's start off with some big news involving IGN. As we recall, Eric Goldman left IGN for Marvel in real life, and while that hiring interfered with IGN's participation in the Ultimate Schmoedown Team Tournament, IGN is now back, only they won't be known as IGN. I've taken to Facebook already and suggested Team Clammy Hands since it serves as connective tissue to their most significant moment as Team IGN. It's also a way to own that bad call, something they were doing in their last match in effort to fuel a rematch with Team MODOK, the artist formerly known as Rotten Tomatoes. It's also kind of funny while reminding the league of the one time they didn't allow leeway. So, Aaron, what's your reaction to the return of IGN?
It's a shame it didn't happen a few weeks ago because we know where they would be if they were still a team. They'd be right in there. They would have been facing Team Action. It's probably the best thing for Team Action that could have happened, I think.
They'd be in the final of my bracket. They would absolutely be in the final of my bracket.
Well, I'm glad they're back. I love both of these guys. I'm a big fan of Iron Jim Vejvoda that I'm trying to make happen. That probably won't happen. I love these guys, man. Happy to have them back.
I'm excited that they're back. I think it was only a matter of time before they got things figured out, what they were going to do. At least that was my hope and feeling. I'm just glad in whatever their name they come back with, I really don't care as long as these two guys are back and showing the league what they're made of.
Well, guys, Commissioner Harloff, in response to last week's episode that featured contender match reformation talk, came out and said non-title matches will never be 5 rounds minus the finals of the tournament. That takes away the special feel of the title matches, end quote. I just want to address this before we move on from this subject until the next time we see a rookie contender struggle with speed round buzzers on their first go-around. The World Series, same game, still special. The NBA Finals, same game, still special. The Super Bowl, same game, still special. The 2 best teams playing at the highest level will make any title match special. You really don't need to reformat title matches when the level of the competition makes the game special. I don't mind longer matches with the belts on the line. My only concern was making sure that number 1 contenders had some experience with the speed round, specifically the buzzers, via their contender matches. A 4-round number 1 contender match with a speed round is the perfect way to maintain the special 5-round title match while making sure that any and all number one contenders have some familiarity with the speed round and its buzzers. Introducing a foreign object such as a buzzer in title matches only creates a disadvantage for first-time contenders. Again, you can gain basic strategy from watching speed rounds, but the actual use of Schmoedown buzzers is something you can only gain via the speed round and its title matches. Now, there's a reason Harloff has to inform people to push and not slam the buzzers, because people have struggled with them time and time again. For people who say champions deserve an advantage, they do get advantages since they get a say on the categories to include and exclude in round 2, as well as who spins first. However, as I said earlier, you don't see Roger Goodell implementing a foreign object like a one-of-a-kind vortex football in the third quarter of the Super Bowl in order to make the title game more special. The Super Bowl is already special. Furthermore, saying that Tom Brady and the Patriots deserve to have this advantage because they've been to previous Super Bowls and played with that one-of-a-kind vortex football just robs us of the highest level of competition, one where both teams are already acclimated to the game's format. Imagine for a second that the teams couldn't just go out and buy this one-of-a-kind vortex football to practice with, much like you can't practice with the Schmoedown buzzers ahead of time. Again, there's no substitute for experience when it comes to the speed round and its buzzers, hence the pitch for number one contender matches with speed rounds. Lastly, I was going to Facebook post 20 pictures of Jeremy Johns playing with Schmoedown buzzers on Awesome-tacular just to drill home the point of why he's the speed round god, but then I remembered that enough people hate me as it is. However, it led me to a potential solution for number one contenders that are looking for Schmoedown buzzer reps in preparation for their title match, something that the Schmoedown precludes them from doing. Just have your agent book you as a guest on Go90.com's Awesome-tacular.
I got to tell you something, man. I'm going to say something you're not expecting. I'm starting to come around. Starting to come around to your way of thinking. However, show me. I got to see it first. I don't know how you would do that other than implementing it, but I'm coming around.
Thank you.
I just like to quote the great Dr. Ian Malcolm. Well, there it is.
Thank you.
Well played. All right, guys. Well, the Ultimate Schmoedown Team Tournament kicked off this week with the number 4 team track, Scott Mantz and Jason Inman, going up against Eric and Connor of CinemaBlend, the number 13 seed, and my dark horse to win their side of the bracket. Let's see if I'm right. I wasn't. In the promo and entrance notes, I don't have much here, guys. Like, it was just pretty straightforward. They were being pretty nice to each other. Mantz wasn't really out of control yet. What did you think here?
Look, in these situations where two teams don't have a lot of history together, it's awfully difficult to set up an effective promo. So I didn't really have any takeaways from this promo. They're just two teams that I like watching. And the next time they play each other, if they play each other, they'll have something to talk about. But it's very difficult, as we've seen before, when two teams have virtually no history together. Even Mantz is like, oh, they're nice guys and all, but even he had nothing to say. And for Scott Mantz to have nothing to say, you know it's tough to do a promo in that sense.
Yeah, again, nothing really going on between these two teams. CinemaBlend feels like they have more to prove. They were close in their first match, couldn't pull it out. Trek, they're coming off a loss, and obviously their title loss to Patriots, so they have stuff that they feel to prove. So it was really just a match about proving to themselves and to people in the league what they can do. And so there wasn't really any back and forth between these two teams personally.
Hopefully there weren't any stinking badges this time for CinemaBlend.
Well, let's jump into round 1. Let's talk about it. In round 1, it was Mantz getting 7, Inman getting 5. So Mantz was starting to run here. We'll get to that in a second. On CinemaBlend side, it was Eric getting 5, Connor getting 5, and Trek leads 12-10 after 1. Frank, what do you think of round 1 here?
Went about it as I expected, except for the fact Scott Mantz, I don't know what he did before. He came out guns blazing, totally took me by surprise. 7 out of 8 is something that he is not accustomed to doing, but he did it here, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
Round 1 was a balanced round on both sides, as neither team wanted to run away with it quite yet. I was feeling pretty good about CinemaBlend until question 7, a question that was tailor-made for the Mance Man. I always look for turning points, as you guys know, and that question, in hindsight, was truly an indication of things to come. And not to beat a dead horse, as this was covered extensively via social media, but Polinsky needs to update his trivia app since Rogue One and Star Trek Beyond came out in 2016. So Harloff stated they would have accepted both 2002 and 2016 as answers. However, this goes back to that long-running point about how the wording of the question can derail your thought process and create doubt in your mind, even when you think you have the right answer or when you do have the right answer. So wording is very important, regardless of challenge rules or if the league would have accepted multiple answers.
Skalisky. Yeah, man. And that question alone, I think, is when Scott made the turn, because when he said 2002, you heard the crowd. They're like, oh my God, like something is going on here. And we know Scott is the Star Trek guy and the movie release dates guy, but I don't think people were expecting him to pull that answer just based on that reaction.
Well, after this match, he's also the Tom Cruise guy.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's get to round 2, where it was CinemaBlend getting Oscar movies going 5 of 6 for 8 points. Trek getting Tom Cruise and sticking with it 6 of 6 for 10 points. They also added a 1-point steal from CinemaBlend with Philadelphia Story. At this point, Scott Mance is 12 of his last 13. 23-18 Trek after 2. Blend is trying so hard to keep it close here, but it looked like it was going to be Mance and Trek's day. What'd you think, Brian?
It's interesting because Trek spun Tom Cruise and Mance jumped the gun really without Jason Inman's approval on the category. And that's something that we've seen Scott Mance do. He kind of jumps the gun and doesn't stop to confer with his partner. And Ellis tried to make a thing out of it. He tried to create some drama there. And I love how Jason Inman shut it down right away, because he was, in fact, on board with Tom Cruise. The issue was Scott Mance just jumped the gun, and he was kind of taken aback by it. But this was the best round of Movie Mance's life. Inman literally put his feet up on the table and just watched the show like we did. And I've said this before, but when Mance is dialed in, he's as dangerous as any player in this league. The knowledge has always been there. It's just a matter of focus. And as I said in our tournament preview, I still don't think he can maintain this level of focus for another 3 matches now. But Trek's round 2 reminded us why they were one bad Makuga call away from a title.
This round was something else from Scott Mance. You know, Jason Inman, he was pretty much the MVP of the stand-in there team, and he had to do nothing. He just let Scott Mance go on his merry way with Tom Cruise. And when you get a high-profile actor like Tom Cruise, and it's a category that Scott Mance has to answer, these are people he talks to. These are movies he sees all the time or has seen in the past. So it was really no shock to me that he ran the table in this round. It was nice to see, though, that CinemaBlend in Oscars, that they really held their own here. 8 points is nothing to scoff at. They did not have an opportunity to steal because, as I just said, Scott Mance ran the table. But CinemaBlend, 8 points is nothing too shabby. But when you go up against Scott Mance, there was nothing they could do in this match. It's just another bad set of unfortunate events for CinemaBlend.
Well, Focus Scott Mance is the most dangerous Scott Mance. And I think this is the most dangerous Mance we've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Well, when it comes to CinemaBlend and their turn, again, they spun 90s first, then they took Oscar movies on their second spin. I just want to single out question 5 for a second. Jimmy Stewart's Oscar win. They missed it. The answer was for the Philadelphia Story, or the answer was Philadelphia Story. That was stolen by Trek, of course. So I just want to file this question away for later, Philadelphia Story with Jimmy Stewart. But this round is why I like CinemaBlend. I'm just going to say CinemaBlend because it's so hard to say CinemaBlend and have it sound proper. But CinemaBlend is a team I like because even though they were down 22-10, they didn't quit, something that many teams might do after a dominant round from Mance or whomever. They also didn't quit when they were down in round 2 against DC Movie News, a match they really could have won had that bad call not gone against them. So While things didn't work out overall, this round proves why the Rundown picked CinemaBlend to go very far in this tournament.
And another note with CinemaBlend, in their previous match, Connor was kind of the guy that was keeping the ship afloat. It was Eric this time who really took the helm and guided them through this Oscar category in the second round.
Connor Schwertfeger.
Let's jump into round 3. Let's talk about the finale here. CinemaBlend had to lead us off here. Missed the 2-pointer Connor did with the Client, but they did bounce back. Eric got William Shatner in Airplane 2. And then the 5-point question, Matthew Modine was Joker in Full Metal Jacket. So we had to go back over to Team Trek, where it was the Mance Man getting the 2-pointer. Shocker there. Mance on a roll here. Dustin Hoffman and Lenny. So here we go. The clincher. One of the two clinchers here. Jason Inman. Guess who's coming to dinner? The actor, Sidney Poitier. It was a guess, I think. Pulls it out. Unbelievable. Trek defeats CinemaBlend 28-26. My bracket is on fire. It's in the trash can. I don't need to see it anymore. I'm going to go bury it in the backyard. Frank, what'd you think here?
Yeah, Jason with the half-court shot, if you will, just heaves one up and he connects. It was a great ending to a match that I thought was pretty competitive, and you had he was on fire. You got CinemaBlend fighting the whole way through, and then it ends on a Jason Inman guess after he basically sat out the second round. He just pops in and goes, Sidney Poitier. And they win the match, and then we're off to round 2 with Trek.
Jason Inman reminds me of somebody like Scott Mance shot the 3-pointer and Inman just tipped it in, is what I feel like happened there. But Brian, what did you think here of round 3 and the finale here?
So in round 3, you can see really when a team is a young team with little experience, because CinemaBlend really showed their inexperience. They really had a chance to potentially win this, but the Client, that's just a miss that cannot happen. But they did bounce back impressively with the Buck Murdoch question, Airplane 2, played by Bill Shatner. They eventually took the lead 26-23 on that amazing Matthew Modine pull, but it was a quiet match for Jason Inman, but he came up big when his number was called in round 3, and people are trying to make Whispergate 2017 happen, all of the start of Schmo's No Show Phase 6, as Mance thought his partner needed more time on their 3-pointer, which is why he mouthed the phrase, repeat the question in essence. And I didn't think Inman would pull this Sidney Poitier question, partly because I was pulling for CinemaBlend, but Jason did indeed pull it off. So it was a great end to a great match, and I truly feel that Trek's experience was the difference here. And yeah, Mance heroics for days, but in round 3, you just saw a more experienced and veteran-savvy team come through.
Mance, at this point, if you're going to count the steal, Frank, I'm sorry, I'm stealing your gimmick here. 14-15 in this match, if I have that correct.
That would be accurate.
This is what's so frustrating, though, about Scott Mance, because he can look as good as any player in this league in certain matches, and then the next match he can look like Greg Alba. So I don't think he can sustain this, but this is why, like I said up top, this is why they were one bad call away from winning a title.
If I can use a hockey term, Scott Mance was standing on his head in this match.
Let's talk about the post-match interview now.
Whoa, call it the correct thing. It's time for Jen at the Wall. Jen at the Wall. It looks like Jen is getting more reps if these first 2 tournament matches are any indication. Hopefully this means Jen at the table can happen somewhat soon.
Is it Jen at the table or is it Jen at the desk? Because
it's Jen at the table. That is the actual hashtag.
I've been using the wrong hashtag. That's why. Ugh.
Frank, you didn't listen to the interview that you were absent for. So Jen at the table, sir. Like place at the table.
Okay. Like Bofeld. Got it.
Oh, you got it right this time. Thank you.
Let's talk about it, because Mance and Inman just kind of doing their thing. Just it's very Scott Mance came to play. He did his falsetto movie release dates, and here comes team action. Ben and Andrew. Ben fires off a salvo saying he's waited so long to kick Scott Mance's ass, and now they may get their opportunity. We're going to talk to Ben about it here in a little bit. We'll see what happened. Brian, what did you think of Action interrupting, and what do you think of a possible matchup between the two?
First off, this little beef that they're starting with Scott Mance, this reminds me a lot of Team ETC. Action has a lot of Team ETC in their DNA, except they're actually good and they're much better in terms of the style department. They've got much better fashion than Team ETC. But I had an issue with Action crashing Trek's interview just because continuity in regard to kayfabe has been a slippery slope in the past. And whenever a player or team crashes an interview to build a rivalry, it can reveal a lot about where a storyline is headed, as well as the results of future matches. Now, the slippery part is when a player or team has another match that has yet to air, like Action did with Deep Cuts at this very moment. So we all DM'd each other and assumed that Action beat Deep Cuts because it's unlikely that they'd crash Trek's interview unless they were confident enough to do so. Think back to Miss Movie Bucket and when she crashed a Lion's Den post-interview to challenge Dagnino, even though she still had General Kalinowski's match on the docket. So that challenge ended up being pointless since the match was canceled for a reason that will soon become clear. But ultimately though, I talked to my sources who confirmed that Trek and Blend did indeed tape before Action and Deep Cut. So there wasn't so much of an issue in this case, but it makes me very nervous. And Jen at the table also implied through some comments at the wall during Action's post-interview that Action was taped after. But again, my ultimate point is this. Let's try to avoid situations where we're setting up rivalries when there's still a match to be played in between. It's not just that it might spoil a match, it also makes continuity mistakes more and more likely. Case in point, at the end of the match, Christian acted like Action was playing next week still. So with the schedule changing in real time, it's just safer to not start rivalries through post-interviews when you still have a match to play in between.
Yeah, there's a lot that I agree with you on there, Brian. One thing, I did enjoy Action crashing this post-match interview. What I would have preferred, though, is something that we've talked about before, is that having these cutscenes after the match or before, let's say, this Action Deep Cuts match, or even after, rather, Jason and Scott and then Team Action of Andrew and Ben, they kind of run into each other in the parking lot or somewhere, and they can have this kind of beef, and that way you're not, That's a
great point, Frank. That is a great point. If you put this little rivalry moment before either of the matches took place, then it's somewhat safe because we don't know the outcome of either match yet. So I really love that idea. That way we play these kayfabe moments a bit safer.
Yeah, and I think it feels more kayfabe-ish, if you will, if it's not always in a post-match interview. I feel like these type of things always happen in a post-match interview. Yeah, it can be entertaining to a degree, but I think when you make it somewhat sort of like how that Jay Washington Dagnino bit and with Robert Meyer Burnett played, those are a little bit more fun for me to watch, and I think maybe the rest of the audience as well. And if you had a Trek Action square off in one of these cutscenes, I think those would be good, if not better, than what we see in the post match.
Yeah, it's just a slippery slope when someone comes out to smack talk in a post interview and they have to say, regardless of my outcome with so-and-so, I want to challenge you afterwards. So just let's avoid those situations, because if you put this before Trek played Blend, I think it would have been even more effective without kind of making me nervous for a potential spoiler. Plus, it's a little slight to Deep Cuts if they have Action coming out when Deep Cuts is like, hey, we still got to play these guys. So I don't know.
I think you make great points. Anything else on this match before we move on?
Well, CinemaBlend cemented their IGN Light status. They even have the same lousy luck. However, as we talked about in our news segment, IGN is now back, hopefully with the team name of Clammy Hands. So I won't be able to say that CinemaBlend is the IGN Light anymore because IGN is now back.
This one, Team Action versus Deep Cuts. And we have a special guest for this occasion to talk about this match. He is one of the hosts of Action Movie Anatomy. He's one half of Team Action. He's Ben Bateman. Welcome, sir.
What's up, guys? How's it going? I'm excited to be here. I got to say, of all the in-the-ring stuff, this will be the first time I've gotten to actually lay the truth on what's going on outside of there. So I appreciate you guys having me on, because I have to say, I've got a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts, especially for you fools. Gentlemen, you fine gentlemen.
We are honored to have you, sir, no doubt about it. Got to start off first with something that you guys said in the promo right away. It was instantly notable to me, a quote. First we play the fans, now we play the janitors. Where did this come from?
All right, well, let's be honest here, guys. One half of Schmoedown is what you know. The other half of Schmoedown is mental warfare. And as Christian and everybody else pointed out, Tad and Eric are not guys who were on-camera personalities. These are guys who, tremendously nice guys out of the ring, but, when it comes to being on camera, Andrew and I are going to do what we know how to do, which is get in their head and call them janitors, all, tab, all the bits. Like, we talk about these things. What do we think is going to get to these guys? And that's kind of what you saw there. And I think safe to say I can pinpoint 5 or 6 different moments in the match that we clearly got to them doing what we were doing.
Ben Bateman Media, your Fuddruckers photo giveaway was clearly a cross-promotion with Booker T's Fuddruckers Studio, where he hosts Reality of Wrestling. Did you enjoy working with the fine folks at Fuddruckers?
Oh, man. We had a phenomenal photographer for that photo shoot. He looked like he had just dropped off a turkey burger. He was about to go back to wash his hands and put on some sanitizer. We really caught him in a strong moment there. No, we literally said to each other, okay, what are some of the 5 or 10 most obnoxious things we could do to get in these guys' heads? And Fuddruckers was definitely in the top 5. We didn't even know what we were going to do with it. Just the concept of including Fuddruckers in a bit, we just knew had to happen.
Did you guys know that Tab is barely sold anymore? It's mostly found in Southern Africa. They even launched a Tab energy line in 2008, as it's an energy drink that is geared mostly towards Hollywood socialites and attractive women. Frank Janisch, have you ever had a Tab energy drink?
I actually have a stockpile of it in my pantry as we speak.
Ah, mixer. I see.
Yeah, we knew Tab was nearly extinct, and as we expected Tab and Eric to be nearly extinct by the end of the match, we felt it was a fitting title to give him.
As I said in some other places, I think this is one of the best promos we've had in a while, perhaps ever. You guys were just in the zone. You were dialed in like Jordan against the Trailblazers in '92. Is there just a mode that you get in where you could keep going forever when it comes to Smack Talk?
Well, okay, you mentioned Jordan against the Blazers in '92. The famous story about Drexler on that All-Star team and showing up with 2 left shoes and being so embarrassed against Jordan that he felt the need to actually play the scrimmage with the 2 left feet. That's how we like our opponents to feel against us. It's kind of embarrassing that at this point, after winning this match, we are now 3-1 with a KO, with a TKO, and people are still talking about us like we need to prove ourselves because X, Y, or Z thing. Let's be honest, fellas. If we were 3-1 with a TKO in regular season, we'd be getting a title shot right now. That's a record historically that has gotten you a title shot. As far as the Smack Talk goes, Andrew and I have worked together a long time. We've known each other a long time. We have a very similar sense of humor, so much so that sometimes in the YouTube comments for our show, people have even made the joke that our periods are in sync. When it comes to talking smack in an arena like this, we have never been more comfortable. And when you put us against, respectfully, the editors of Collider, we're going to really lean into it. We're not talking about people who we really fear the loss to.
You mentioned this, but what's the quick origin story of you and Drew?
Years ago, 6 years ago, we were both, doing the entertainment thing in LA, working, bartending, serving jobs. And we used to play this game. I can't remember exactly how it started, but one of us brought up movies at one point. Drew's an actor and I'm a host, and we started talking movies. I think it probably originated talking about Lord of the Rings. And the game was, okay, you choose an actor. You go back and forth during the shift, one at a time, till the shift is over, naming one theatrical release, and except in the case of Seagal and Van Damme, they're the only legal non-theatrical people. But everybody else, theatrical release, one at a time till somebody gets stumped. And we would go 40, 50, 60 movies deep on your Cages and your L. Jacksons, your De Niro's, your people like that. We would find we'd know 40, 50, 60 movies for a lot of these catalogs. We did this for a few years, and I worked for the Popcorn Talk Network over with Maria Menounos. And at one point early on, I had this idea to pitch a show. I love action movies, not your run-of-the-mill, Tony Jaa fighting style action movies. I'm talking
Tango and Cash.
Yeah, right. Your 90s stuff. When we concepted Action Movie Anatomy, the whole idea was movies like Point Break.
57.
The Rock, exactly. Everything from the B stuff, like 57, your Tango and Cash, to The Rock and Point Break and Speed and Predator and all those movies. And so we made a list. We were going to do one movie per show on that show. It expanded a little further. So now we do everything from, like, we're doing Road to Perdition next week, for instance, because it's great movie, great actors. It has a decent amount of action. And so we have kind of expanded the show, but we've now done 100 and just shy of 110 episodes of that show, 12 million YouTube views total. We do that every week. We've done that for 110 weeks. So our friendship and our sense of humor and our knowledge has really, I would say, grown from that show.
Frank and I, we're guilty of this, so you can lash out at us all you want, but there's this big echo chamber within the Schmoedown that basically says team action is a one-category wonder. Obviously, you've proved that otherwise, but what do you want to say to all of your critics, including Frank and I? What do you want to say about that echo chamber?
Well, look, guys, I think it's pretty obvious at this point, if you look at the record we have and the momentum we have, that the way our Schmoedown fate has worked has really been in our favor. That initial match against Night Sisters was, I mean, in all respect to Emma and Joelle, who are great people, and we like them a great deal, that was a warm-up for us. We didn't have our best match. We came out of it with a TKO. It was fine. I think after that, those next two matches, they were sort of perfect. The Nerds Watch match was so close. We were a millisecond away from the win. I knew both the final answers. I whispered them to Andrew, in both cases before the win happened, and that could have been our match. So, the comeback there with Action Adventure gave us a tremendous amount of confidence. That was the first match anybody paid any attention to us. The match after that, late to the party, that was, again, the highest scoring team match, the most points scored in a regular team match, and that was largely off the back of Action Adventure. Just because we've done well with it 2 times in a row does not mean it's all we know, and I think we showed that today going 5 of 6 in drama. When we spun drama, we looked at each other, and I just looked at Andrew, and I said, listen, there's 2 to 4 categories that exist in the world I don't want. Drama's not one of them. I'm not going to respin drama. We 5 of 6'd it. I just think people need to look at a larger sample size, and they will. They will, because we're going to win the tournament.
You guys are victorious. I know I'm kind of burying the lead here. And it seems like what I've seen across social media, YouTube, the Facebook groups, and Twitter is that people are starting to turn around on Team Action, and you guys are starting to gain a little bit of fan backing now. Is that something that even crosses your mind, or you guys just doing you guys?
We understand we can be pricks. We get that. It's part of who we are when it comes to competing. People played sports growing up. Like, everybody has some side of them that is that way. But bottom line, we play for the fans. We love to have an audience. There's nothing we enjoy more than having people in our corner that recognize not only what it takes to win and appreciates it, but also what we love. We do a show every week that talks about the movies we love and wanting to get people excited about those movies, wanting to watch those movies. That's really what we're about. We love movies. That's why we got into Schmoedown in the first place. And having the groundswell of fans behind us, if they're behind us for the right reasons, which a lot of them it seems are, that's the most exciting thing in the world. Look, we understand we're heels. It's not news to us. The people that can respect and appreciate that, look, I mean, you guys understood. You liked watching Triple H and X-Pac and these guys in the 90s. I mean, that's part of showmanship. And if people can get behind us for the right reasons, we've never been happier. So definitely looking at that online, that's been a big moment for us.
Well, let's talk about round 1, where Ben, man, you were coming in hot. 7 points for you, 3 for Andrew. And on the other side, we had 5 for Aaron, 4 for Thad. So at the end of round 1, you guys at Team Action were leading 10-9. How are you feeling after round 1?
What I tend to say about Movie Trivia Schmoedown is, obviously everybody knows anybody can lose on any given day, right? So you get these guys, Tim Franco, Robert, Bibiani in his debut. When you come out and you have the perfect date, yeah, it's real impressive. But round 1's so random that no one's going to do that with any consistency. Even 7 of 8 consistently is very hard to do. I had a good day today. Andrew didn't have his best day. I've watched a lot of Schmoedown matches. I know what it takes to have a great day. I've also seen what happens when you can't understand why you've had a poor day. It's just the way the questions lie sometimes. And at the end of round 1, I think you guys probably remember, towards the end of it, I poured Andrew some of that fine Andre. And I wanted to just, really look at him and just say, brother, it's a tough couple questions. Everybody's missed 2 in a row before, and everybody's gotten 2 in a row right before. All it's going to take is 2 in a row correct to get going hot in the second round. And anybody who's watched our matches leading up to now has seen, Drew has been on fire. I would argue that in the action adventure category, Drew is better than I am, and a lot of our success in those two matches has come from his dominance in that category. So I was feeling good. Obviously, I love getting 7 of 8, but by no means was I wasn't worried about his performance. I didn't think he was off his game, even though the questions he missed, to be honest, you know how the people you guys probably know each other very well here. You probably know what each other likes and what each other knows, right? I knew Drew knew 2 of those answers. Absolutely. He should have been 5 of 8. He had one of the can't access the answer in time moments, and that's just going to happen sometimes.
Ben, let me ask you about question 6. Did Drew say Philadelphia's story despite writing the correct answer of Philadelphia? Because I'm pretty sure he said the Philadelphia story based on the question earlier in the day from Trek's match. So did you hear that as well? Was that just a slight mistake, even though he had Philadelphia written on his board?
You heard him say the Philadelphia story. That is correct. Andrew knows absolutely that Tom Hanks is one of 3 Oscar winners all time to win back-to-back Oscars in a lead category. He is fully aware that the Philadelphia is the Jonathan Demme film from 1993 starring Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. And he's also aware that the Philadelphia story, 1940, is the only film ever to see Jimmy Stewart win an Oscar. So these are all things that Andrew is fully aware of, as I know, because we've discussed them. And he said it in a moment of just sort of looseness. I think he was sort of having fun with it. And anything anybody picked up that was a mistake or he was unclear that's ridiculous. That's a slam dunk question for him.
Yeah, I think he had the Trek match on his mind still, but he wrote it correctly on the board, so that backed him up. But he took a nice lead there. Now, you were sharp in this round, and since you and Drew are showmen, do you ever find yourself mentally exhausted once the actual match is underway after talking so much smack and putting on such a show? Or are you able to kind of tap into your chi and reach another level once the game starts?
That's a really interesting question you asked there. I think there are 2 halves to it. On the one hand, if you are all in on the gimmick, you're all in on the act, you are full energy, and you start to wilt a little bit, like you're losing, you're answering the questions incorrectly, I think that's where you can start to feel the energy getting low. But when you're all in and you're 7 of 8 like I was in round 1, it's hard not to feel like you just can, do anything, because we almost, get each other pumped up doing those promos and getting some of the jokes you guys hear. We're definitely clever people, but we spend the week leading up to it just when we see each other throwing out bits here and there, because how can you not? You're excited about the match. And so that stuff, they're not just like one-offs that make us laugh. These are like jokes where I've gone through 3 or 4 in my head during the week and I throw out my best one and he takes a good, crack at it. And so I think we both have a lot of energy going in just because we feel like we're giving our best stuff. So it's hard for me to really run out of energy. Talk to me after I have a 3 for 8 or 2 for 8 in a title match or something like that. And that's, I'll probably give you a different answer, but luckily that hasn't happened yet.
I always look for turning points during a match, and Deep Cuts had an early lead 6-4, but then they missed the Chris Lambert Mortal Kombat question, which I think was inexcusable. Can you sense that turning point as well during the match? Did you have this feeling like, oh, we're now tied, this is where we're going to run away with it? Do you feel the momentum shifting as you're playing?
Oh, absolutely. I mentioned there's 4 or 5 moments that I can pay attention to in this match that I remember distinctly as the turning points. And yes, and that is one of them. Anytime, look, guys, let's be honest. We're a bunch of 18 to 45 white males who have watched 80% the same movies in this league. I mean, there's a tiny minority of people in this league that don't fit exactly into that category. So when you talk about something like a movie like Mortal Kombat, released 1995, Christopher Lambert's only really legitimate credit to that point was the Highlander franchise. Everybody knows that Christopher Lambert played Lord Raiden. I mean, that's like one of those things that if we went to a kegger, we'd all be talking and laughing, and somebody would bring that movie up, and 4 of the 5 people at that kegger would be able to quote and laugh at one of the lines. So when something like that happens, those guys are looking at each other going, all right, we should have known that. We know that we know that. And it's not a social commentary about the whole white males thing. It's just, that's what it is. Look on the internet. That's who primarily, infests the internet talking about this stuff. And I think when you miss a question like that as a team, when both of you miss it, yeah, definitely. As guys who feel like we know our stuff pretty well, that's a big turn the knife moment, especially when you're playing against janitors like that. It's,
I appreciate that you guys added the Lord in front of it as not just Raiden, Lord Raiden.
We covered Mortal Kombat on the show probably a year ago, and several of the lines that we quoted in that sequence, we have quoted about 100 times. Lines like, "Have you forgot? We are fighting for the fate of the world." That's one of our favorites. The Liu Kang younger brother, "Hey Liu, remember when our parents died?" That's not one of my favorites. And finally, the Lord Raiden, when Shang Tsung's like, "Lord Raiden, how good of you to grace us with your presence." That's like, all three of those are my top of the list for me. So I watched Mortal Kombat growing up 93 times. That was my favorite film growing up. I watched it weekly for a couple years there.
Definitely not Taylor Sheridan dialogue. Frank, what did you think here of round one?
Round one was very, very back and forth for at least that first half of the round, where Deep Cuts was fending off action, and then that action adventure category with Mortal Kombat. I thought it was very fitting that you being the team action adventure is what was one of those first major points in the match that went heavily in your favor. You guys both got it correct. Deep Cuts got it wrong. I just thought the irony was not lost on me in that moment.
I mean, do you guys remember watching that movie in theaters, or your friends talking about it?
Oh, of course.
I went to see that movie in the theater, and right after we saw the movie, we went to like a Fry's and got the soundtrack. And me and my friend would like fake fight in the backyard, listen to that music. I mean, I love that movie.
That soundtrack, man. That was my high school basketball team's entrance music, as well as the John Tesh NBA on NBC. God, what's it called? Rolling Rock? What's the name of the theme?
Yeah. I know
Round Ball Rock.
Yeah.
That and Mortal Kombat were our entrance themes. Man, I mean, that is, again, something that those two guys have to know. But before we get to round two, I just want to make a quick note to other competitors listening. Study up on David O. Russell. Skaliski's apps are really giving us a lot of David O. Russell questions lately. So do your homework on David O. Russell, something Lily Tomlin once did on the set of I Heart Huckabees, but she couldn't handle all the last-second changes. So don't be Lily Tomlin. Prepare for David O. Russell, something MODOK also did not do.
Somehow I knew you were going to bring that up, Brian. I knew you were going to come to that David O. Russell question. So
that's what I do.
Yeah, it is. Let's go to round two, where it was Deep Cuts going first, getting Spinner's Choice and taking comic book movies. They go 5 of 6 and get 10 points. Action steps up to the plate, rolls dramas, says, hey, we'll stick with it. We talked about it a little bit earlier. 5 of 6, 8 points. So at the end of round two, Deep Cuts with a slight lead here, 19-18. Ben, at this point, are you worried a little bit, or are you just kind of riding it out here?
Well, let's just talk about something that's pretty obvious here, fellas. First and foremost, I'm just sick and tired of comic book movies being this thing that people wear as a cross of pride. I'm tired of it. It's like, all right, we're all nerds. We all watch movies. Can we please watch something other than the 50 comic book movies that everybody seems to memorize the cast lists of? Like, it's nothing against Deep Cuts personally, because they're part of the same exact generation of people that do it. But it's like when they spin that category, the smart thing for them to do there, no question, is take action adventure. Unless they really feel like they're horrible at action adventure, they take that shit off the board, because they should know you want to absolutely skunk us on the category. And the fact that they took comic book movies, it's like, yeah, they had a perfectly fine round, but it's like, that's the best you can do. And you've seen what happens. We've played from behind 2 matches in a row, getting action adventure, which is on the board, which means now we have one less category to worry about spinning. So that's my first thing, is they spun it, and I was just like, all right, good luck, guys. If you get 4 or 5 or 6 of 6, we're going to beat you. Just like, that's the best you can do. Not to mention, quick preview of what happened on the 5-point question, but let's get back to our questions here. They had a fine round. When we spun drama, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead on the episode, but when they spun comic book movies, I was not worried, I guess, is the short answer.
Clearly, Drew enjoyed that Andre, because he kept the janitor bit going. He made a nice comment about a urinal. I'm not going to go into too much detail there.
Are you talking about I'll take a shit in the urinal?
Exactly.
No, that was my comment, because Drew had my 2 single favorite moments in that entire episode were "fuck you, Tab," and I'm gonna shit in the urinal, and he had "fuck you, Tab," and I had "I'm gonna shit in the urinal." So I'll give you that one right there.
Right, but he may have kept it going, and then he said, "Oh, are you saying janitors don't work?"
Oh, yeah.
They made a comment in regards
to that.
I got to ask you about question 5, the Jackie Earl Haley question as Rorschach. There was no challenge by you guys. There must have been some commotion on set when they mispronounced Haley as Hale. So Was there any behind the scenes action you can tell us about that question?
Well, okay, so you hear me in the background when he says it. I say, hey, wait a minute, because I obviously heard him say hail.
Yeah.
And he took long enough to answer the question in the first place that I thought a little bit that he might actually have stuck to hail. And I called him out, and you hear him correct himself and say, Haley. And Drew looked at me, and he shook his head. It's one of those things where I think if we had challenged it, there's a chance. And you don't get to use your challenge rule very often. So actually, I'm inclined to think that given the opportunity to use the challenge rule, it is smart. On the other hand, I'd much rather have the ability to use it in a crucial moment, where at that point, neither of us was really worried about these guys. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you hear him correct himself. If I had said hail and he hadn't said anything, I would have pushed forward. You hear me in the background say, wait a minute. Because obviously, we both know, Jackie L. Haley, little children. We joke about him a lot. Incidentally, small trivia fact, the 1983 film Losing It, one of Tom Cruise's first 4 credits about a group of high school kids that go to Tijuana to lose their virginity. He's one of the high school kids, Jackie L. Haley.
That's interesting because I watched the match twice, at least the cut that I saw, and I did not hear them correct themselves to Haley. So maybe what you heard on the day did not make the cut. I'm not sure, but I went back and checked twice, and I could not hear them.
You're right. But you're right, because I definitely did not hear it in the playback. But I'll tell you, at the moment, you hear my first initial, hey, I say, wait a minute, and then he said Haley. So I think they cut that part out.
Okay.
But I can guarantee that happened because you hear me immediately react. I was on the train.
Well, that's exactly what I was looking to hear. So I appreciate that insight. And 10 out of 12 points for deep cuts. They're putting up a big fight. And like you already said, you didn't seem to be too phased. Then you guys are up next. You spun drama. There seemed to be a big debate between the two of you. Was Drew the more hesitant one as far as taking drama, or was it you?
Oh, it was definitely a conversation where I looked at them and I said, listen, I know personally I'm good at drama, and I happen to know from our conversations that you're good at drama. I think there's a sense that drama is such a wide category, which I think is why there was a conversation there. But at the end of the day, when you think about the movies we like to talk about, especially I mentioned we're covering Road to Perdition. We recently covered Saving Private Ryan. Movies that have action in them, but technically are considered drama, are some of our favorites. For my money, there are definitely, there's certainly 6 questions that could have come up in a row that would have stumped us on drama, because it is an incredibly wide category. But I looked at that board and I said, there's at least 3 things on that board. If we spin, I don't want to deal with that stress. And drama's not close to one of them. So I'm not going to run the risk when we at least have a category that's not in the bottom 3. And it's the first round of the tournament. Like, let's just take care of business here and do what we know we can do. It was an action adventure, but I mean, come on. Drama, that's in our wheelhouse. So, he looked at me and he agreed, and that's why we went with it.
When deep cuts got spinners, I thought actually they should take action adventure, take that away from you guys, Ben. And I thought they probably would have done fairly well given what I've seen them do so far in the Schmoedown. I thought they could have handled it and then by proxy take points away from you. That's what I thought they should do, but they went with apparently Aaron's strength in comic book movies, and it did work out for them. They got 10 points. When you guys got drama, I was actually thinking kind of what you were just saying, because I have watched your show a few times, and you do talk about movies that can be drama-esque, that do have action elements, and so I thought that's perhaps where you guys were leaning, or maybe both of you were leaning. For you guys to go to drama didn't surprise me too much, because like you said, it's in your wheelhouse, and I thought some of these movies that they could throw at you would fall in between both of these genres, drama and action adventure. It did work out to your advantage for the most part. You guys got 8 points, multiple choice a few times, but in the end, you guys kept it within 1 point going to that final round. So I thought it was a pretty good second round by both teams, despite the first round going back and forth. This one was pretty tit for tat in the second round. So it was a pretty fun round to watch, all in all.
Deep Cuts needed to capitalize on that George Strait steal opportunity. I mean, that's a turning point right there. They've got to make action pay when the opportunity presents itself. But Ben, question 5, Chris Pine in finest hours. What was going on there? You couldn't hear the question. You thought it was Ellis's pronunciation. What was going on there?
I couldn't tell what the hell he was saying. I mean, like, I understand. I've watched it back now, and we cracked up about it today when we watched it back. But there was something about the way that he said it. And look, what I have learned playing Schmoedown is that you don't give away those small edges. You don't try to be prideful and act like you understand the question if you don't. Like, I'm going to ask him to repeat the question, and I'm going to use a JTE rule if that's what it takes, because if he says a word in there that gets me going down the wrong path, and I spend my 16 seconds thinking about something that triggers off the wrong word, that's a wasted 16 seconds. So I'm not going to bother with that. And, I've met Chris Pine. I've interviewed him. I've met Ben Foster. I've interviewed him. I know those guys. I know that movie. And I wanted to make sure I absolutely had all of the correct information before postulating on it with Andrew. And, you saw Drew and I fighting a little bit about it because, again, there was just some way the words were phrased that tripped me up. And as soon as he made it clear to me what was going on, I went in the tank for a second, established that, I knew it, and checked it with Drew. He concurred. That was that. So
thank you for validating something that I've been saying on this show for months. The wording of these questions is so important, and one wrong word can derail your thinking, even though you may have had the right answer the entire time. But a note to competitors, question 6, another Fargo question. Polinsky has Fargo on the brain a lot of lately. So 8-point turn for action. Again, you can't help but recognize the opportunities that Deep Cuts threw away in this round as well as round 1. Ben Bateman Media, you guys held it together despite a huge round from Deep Cuts. And I always look to see how teams bounce back when an other team or other player has a huge round. Some people might quit. Their attitude might change. Their body language might change. But you guys weren't messing around. You knew you were still in this, and you weren't phased whatsoever.
You mentioned that about the nature of responding. And are we all sports fans here? Do you guys all watch football, basketball, anything?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the greatest fantasy player you've ever met.
Oh,
I would argue against that just because I know that I exist, but I love fantasy basketball. I love fantasy football. I've commissioned a league called the Liquor League for 6 years. It's extremely competitive. And long story short, I've watched a lot of football. I've watched a lot of basketball. The greatest athlete in the history of the NFL is Tom Brady. I think it's pretty clear. I'm from Seattle. I'm a Seahawks fan. I don't hesitate to acknowledge that Tom Brady is the GOAT. I don't, and if anybody argues differently, they're not paying attention. So one of the things that makes Tom Brady so great and was illustrated so clearly this last year was that when they're down and they're in a completely impossible situation, there's no hesitance from that audience to know, this is my guy. We've seen him do this enough times to know it's not even the level 1 or the level 2. It's that last little hurdle in level 3 that's going to get them where we need them to get. And I think what happened to us against Nerds Watch was kind of the most fortunate thing that ever could have happened, because as we've said in our matches now, we enjoy playing from behind in round 2. We don't like it to be easy. We don't want to have to deal with watching our opponents get points. We want to sit there and say, okay, this is how many points we need to get. Yeah, we'll get them, no problem. And we do it over and over again. It just kind of is who we are. So I think that idea that there's a shift in certain people, honest to God, we'll save that for really commenting on that until we're starting to play those top few teams. Because you look at the Patriots, they've defended their belt 5 times. That's a team that's not going to wilt when their opponent has a good round. They're not going to watch their opponent get a tough answer and not wager a guess because they're tilted. Those are the people you have to worry about. Right? When you're worrying about somebody in round 1 of a tournament, that's different. We're performers. We know our shit, and that's just not going to trip us up.
That Chris Pine question, though, that ultimately foreshadowed the outcome. So before we get to round 3, I just want to point out this awkward Ellis and Ken exchange. Ken tried to say better the enemy you know, or better with the enemy you know. And actually what Knapsack meant was better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Ellis had no idea what Knapsack was talking about, so much so that he replied, no, I've never been in combat. And Aaron, I was wondering, do you think this was a callback to Jason Inman's famous line, about having been in war or something to that effect. Do you remember Inman's line about that?
Oh, yeah, when he said he was the one that actually went to war.
We cracked on Snyder.
You correct on Snyder. So I wonder if that was somehow a callback or homage to that, but it ultimately doesn't matter. So
Jason Inman, there is no amount of Schmoedown heroics that can ever equal actually serving our country, and that is who Jason Inman is. Beyond the arena of Schmoedown, he is truly somebody who committed and sacrificed to be a hero for our country. But beyond that, and all the respect I can give Inman, he is carried by Scott Mans. Period. Now, the second thing I was going to say is the comment, "The devil you know," that he was trying to make reference to, famously is said in my fifth favorite film of all time, which is Warrior, which stars Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton and has an Academy Award nomination for Nick Nolte in there, in which Tom Hardy approaches Nolte as his alcoholic father who he's estranged from to train him. And Nolte looks at him and says, "The devil you know." And that's one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. And just to point out there, in case anybody hasn't seen Warrior, you owe it to yourself to watch the film. It's truly one of the ultimate underrated films ever made. It's about as good as it gets.
One of my favorite touches of that film is the rattling of Hardy's pills in his sweatshirt. I love that little touch because Nolte picks up on it and recognizes the mental state that his character is still in with just the rattling of his pills.
When he walks in, he says, "There was two. It was ch-ch."
Exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, let's get into round 3, where you guys were up first. And it was yourself, Ben, answering the 2-point question, the color purple, which you played a little bit of strategy here. I didn't see it coming. I thought it was expertly done. Tell me what happened here.
So the color purple question, a couple things. First of all, we get the category of directors, right? Directors is, no secret here. Directors is my category. In terms of Drew and I, things we know best, directors is a strong category for me. And Spielberg especially is someone I know very well. So the question was asked, and it was asked in a very, aside from the distinctive answer of Whoopi Goldberg, it was a pretty vague question in terms of Spielberg. There was no plot point. There was no year. It was a novel, which, let's be honest, guys, when you think about a film you love, how often do you know the author of the book? I mean, especially when you're talking 32 years ago. That's not exactly on my radar. So you're literally talking about a Steven Spielberg film that stars Whoopi Goldberg, which on the surface to most people is a very obvious answer. However, remember, that film came out 3 years before I was born. And I know my shit, evidenced by the answer, but I wasn't going to impulsively answer the question. So 2 things happened in the moment that I got the answer in my head, which was, question was asked, I had my moment. The first thing that popped into my head was the color purple. And it didn't click, because in my gut, the way I play movie trivia is that when an answer comes into my gut, if it clicks, I always use it as the default, always. And I won't go to repeat the question if it's a gut answer, like on a movie release year or something like that. It is what it is. We know things we don't realize we know. That's the way I've realized the brain works. However, it came down to 0 on this question, and I didn't feel strongly enough to just go with the answer. And I knew, we had 2 of these left. It was worth it. So I went to repeat the question. Now, by the time I went to repeat the question, as soon as they started counting down, I realized this was the only reasonable answer, because think about it. It's the most prominent answer to the question in terms of a prominent Steven Spielberg movie that stars Whoopi Goldberg, even if you don't know that Spielberg directed the movie. It's the most prominently featured Whoopi Goldberg movie directed by a critically acclaimed director. So that's really the logic you have to use there. And as soon as I realized that, which was in the middle of please repeat the question, I was going to milk it to 0, and I was going to wager it as a guess, even though that was my gut answer when they asked the question. And that's what I did. And I believe that answer, the way that it came out, the way the repeat the question worked, was the nail in the coffin to rattle Tad and Eric and get us the win. That's what I think happened. I think even evidenced by them talking about it in the post game, I think they had a moment where their sphincter loosened, and they believed they had a shot to win because they believed I was going to miss that question. They thought it was their 0. And I got the question right, because obviously it was somewhere in there. And I think they wilted. I think they looked at an uphill battle at that point. That's just my theory, though. What do you guys think?
Ben Bateman Media, you insist that this was not a song and dance, the time that you took to answer this question. Hand to God, this was not a song and dance?
When you ask me a question I know the answer to, invariably, I'm not going to go to time like that. When you ask me a question that I have a gut feeling, which in my experience is about a 30% correct answer, I'm not going to waste the moment down points in the third round. I'm going to absolutely be careful. I'll make my mistakes, guys. Like, it's going to happen. Everybody gets rattled under the lights and they make a mistake. They don't go through their regressions. This was not a moment where I was worried about going through my progression. I was going to hit the dump off on the left side. I was going to make sure I got my, my valve route with my running back coming off the screen and get that touchdown. I was not going to get blitzed.
You do realize why it took you so long to answer this question, right?
Why?
Because you didn't have your purple Mr. Glass suit on. Had you worn that suit, you would have answered it instantly, I swear. And I just had to ask about the song and dance because Josh Mocha is the king of the I know the answer, but I'm going to play up the moment for the sake of drama. Just ask Team Schmoes and that Green Berets question. So amazing moment. It definitely toyed with deep cuts. You could tell they were so hopeful that you were going to miss this because they had a chance to win at that point. But great moment. It's going to go down in your highlight reel for years to come. But I still insist, had you worn your Mr. Glass suit, it would have been an instant answer on your part.
I would argue that Drew getting love bug in the previous match was every bit as
huge pull.
True. Very true.
Every bit as much of a pull. And even in the previous match before that, the Ben-Hur question, which incidentally I knew the answer to, but even so, I think there was some people watching that episode that would not have known that a Charlton Heston and William Wyler film from 1959 was Ben-Hur. I think that's, like I said, I talked about the audience that is part of this community. And I think every match has one of those important pulls. So I was glad to be the guy that does it this time. I think Drew will probably be the guy that does it next time.
I want to add on to the point where you were talking about not putting on, it wasn't a show. You really were taking your time. Obviously you wouldn't want to stress out your partner by putting on something that he wasn't aware, because you guys can't confer. So it's not like he knows it's a game. He's taking it just as seriously, and he's probably getting stressed thinking you don't know the answer. So it makes sense as to why would you endanger your victory by stressing out your partner?
Yeah, look, I think it's one of those things like this. Okay, if you look at the Los Angeles Lakers 5 championships in the 1980s, and you know that they've won 5 championships, and you're a basketball nut, and you know that of the 9 years that you can, I guess the 10 years if you're going to put 80 that you can keep in question, for a fact that 5 of them belong to the Lakers, and 3 of them belong to the Celtics. So there's only 2 years that aren't Lakers or Celtics. That's very confusing. And if you get a question under the lights about that, you are going to sit there and you are going to ponder and you're going to go back and forth. And you are not going to answer that question when it's just as easily 83, 84, 85, 87, 88 in your head without really taking your time. And I think we are good enough competitors and on each other's team enough to know that when it's something like that, he knows that's the reason I'm taking the time. He knows that I know Spielberg. He knows that. He knows that I know Oscars. Look, you guys could give me a year in the last 50 right now, and I could give you actor, actress, director, supporting. Perfect. In 20 seconds or less. He knows that. It's not a thing where I'm stressing him out on purpose. He knows if I'm taking my time, there's a reason, and that's why I did.
Yeah, it's about trust as well. I think that's what it comes down to. It's you guys have worked together for a long time. Obviously, you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, so it's about trust as well.
100%. Yeah, and like I said, we've worked together a long time, so.
Aaron, that's an interesting point. There is validity to that, as you saw Scott Mance getting stressed out during Jason Inman's three-pointer in their match. But I just want to go back to that highlight reel pull in regards to the color purple. The only reason I give that more priority, more value is because of the tourney stakes. Yeah, you guys have had some great pulls, but I consider this the biggest match of your Schmoedown careers thus far, given that it's in the first round of a tournament. So I will be citing the color purple moment for a very long time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a strong, correct answer after that very careful deliberation there in my head. Do your guys' brains have sort of that deductive reasoning principle in there where you're kind of going down the list? You don't. It's visual for me, right? It's like it's a long list. I can't go from 1 to 10 without working through 2 through 8 first.
Right.
And I had to get to 7, 8, 9 before I could effectively answer 10. And I'm just not going to cheat myself if I have an out.
Yeah, my brain has everything, so anything you can describe it has. But could you feel the wind get knocked out of Thad? God, I'm hearing you guys say their names wrong. That I'm now starting to say their names wrong. But could you hear or feel the wind get knocked out of Thad and Aaron at that moment when you answered the color purple?
1,000%. And you know why? It's because you could see. Listen, there's two things I can point to in that match that are specific, and I hate to invoke, Tom Dagnino because I think he's mostly, full of hot air. Yeah, I love Finstock, but his moments, the things he says, loser behavior, as he likes to say. One of them is in their pregame interview. They reference the last time we lost, blah 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 blah. That's the way they started a sentence. You don't say something that way unless in your mind there's a real reason, right? You think there's a chance you're going to lose. And the second one is when it went to their questions in the third round, after we had given that 2-point question and after we'd had that poll, you can hear on the mic, they're like, here's the question. And you hear them go, I'll pay tribute on this one. They're totally, totally flustered. They're totally rattled. All self-confidence at that point has been lost. Again, like we talked to those guys after the match, like when it comes to, competing versus just like in person, they're great guys. We have no personal grudge against Thad and Aaron. They're good people. But when it comes to the Schmoedown, we are going to invoke, every principle of competition we can. And, that tactic to go that long, yeah, sure. Part of it was, accessing the correct answer. Part of it was, it's okay to do this because I think I have the right answer and I'm going to make sure I stretch this out to just completely gut punch them.
And they missed all of their round 3 questions after that. They are editors. They probably watch these matches more than anyone. And that Men in Black question, the protecting the Earth from the scum of the universe, that has been asked before within the Schmoedown. So the fact that they missed that is inexcusable. It's inexcusable that they did not ask for a repeat request. I understand that they would miss the Cinderella's 2 evil sisters question, their 3-pointer, but their 5-pointer, the villains in Iron Man 2, you mentioned their wheel round, the fact that they picked comic book movies. They tried to live by comic book movies, but they also died by comic book movies since they couldn't come up with Justin Hammer, one of the 2 villains in Iron Man 2. Justin Hammer is a villain that has been mentioned within the Schmoedown before. So deep cuts, they had opportunities to win this match, and they simply couldn't capitalize. And I believe your color purple answer kind of punched them in the gut so hard that they just couldn't recover even things they knew.
Yeah, I mean, when you choose, superhero comic book films as your round 2 and you get that as the 5, it's pretty rough. And, my other thing to say is the good guys dress in black. Remember that just in case you ever face-to-face and make contact,
I got to write that down.
That's the
It's
the first verse to the Men in Black, song by Will Smith there. We were looking at each Andrew kind of stumbled through some Will Smith rap verse there after they got it wrong, but we were both pretty stoked about that.
Does it feel good to know that you're no longer this so-called one category wonder?
Oh, it really does, guys. And I'll tell you, if you would be so kind as to have one of us on after we completely demolished Trek. And I saw the comments today, by the way, on YouTube that Trek is going to destroy us. Look, I've never played Trek before, and look, maybe they have the match of their life, and everybody can lose, so you never know what happens to us. But I'll tell you, everybody knows Scott Mance has good days and he has bad days. Jason Inman is his caddy. So, I'm going to show you guys what happens when a real team that's really prepared plays against a team like that. And I hope we don't get action adventure. I really, really hope we don't get action adventure. Now, if we do, we'll probably score 33 points. But, if we don't, it'll be sweet. It will be so sweet. I mean, look, let's talk. You guys are historians of this league. Frank, you know the stats better than anyone, right?
Sure.
3-1 with TKO. If it wasn't tournament time, would be right on that conversation for title shot.
Yeah, it's definitely right on the conversation. Christian, he does things his own way. I look at the rankings and how teams are stacked in a different way, more statistically based. Sure, I mean, you guys' percentage coming into this match wasn't very good, but somehow you guys always end up doing really well in the second round, albeit action adventure, and then you proved yourself in the drama category. You got really lucky with deep cuts going over in that final round. One of the very few times this league has ever seen teams or individuals, for that matter, go over in the third round. They couldn't even, couldn't crack a 3-pointer or a 5-pointer to send it back to you guys. There is a lot of luck based on your guys' part in terms of opponents not living up to their previous matches, how well they've done. So this one kind of threw me for a loop, especially when Andrew only got 3, you got 7. It was this match was all kinds of different from how you guys have played in the past, aside from the second round. It was just one of these matches, very entertaining, and also just what this game shows is very unpredictable, and that's what's so hard about predicting matches. And you can look at numbers, and I'm not going to say the numbers always tell the story, because if anything I've learned from keeping track of all this, matches like today don't follow any sort of rhythm or rhyme to anything that's happened in the past. So
let me ask you this then. Whether we win our next match or we win our next match with a TKO, if we lose it, strike it from the record. But let's pretend we win our next match, we're 4-1 with a TKO. Versus if we win our next match, we're 4-1 with a TKO, which would be the ultimate. At that point, do you think we deserve a title shot? Even though we're going to have to play 2 more matches to even get that shot. Everybody knows that.
Do you guys deserve...
If we're 4-1 with 2 TKOs, I think that's a title shot.
Yeah, I would have a hard time disagreeing with that. But it also, if you guys were the only one like that, absolutely. It remains to be seen what other teams would do outside of you guys. But you for sure in the conversation of 4 wins, a TKO does a lot to bolster your chances at that title shot. And I could envision seeing a scenario where it happened between, top 10 Wolves of Steel. They had 2 different matches going on, and then those teams ended up fighting their way for title shots. I could see that kind of scenario, but we're in a tournament, which is kind of makes things a lot more interesting and fun for fans. Unfortunately for you and Andrew, you guys got to go through quite a gauntlet to get that title shot at this point. But no, I would think a title shot with that record, given how young the league is, it definitely would warrant a number 1 contenders match for sure.
I'm trying to just stay nice and balanced, not too critical. But I know 2 of you called us to lose. Janisch, you being one of them.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. You go by numbers.
Reversed.
I get it.
This is your coming out party. I mean, you guys have had big splashes before, but this is the tournament. There are more eyes on this particular tournament. The Schmoedown is growing. I feel this is your true coming out party, because now no one can say, oh, they just got the action category, that's why they won. There is no excuse now.
I'm going to disagree on the coming out party part, because it's against Deep Cuts, not a very good team.
It's in the tournament, though.
I understand it's a tournament win, and that's fine. Personally, I think this Trek match, this is where you make your stance. This is where everyone is fully on notice, and I think this Trek match will definitely set you guys to the top, or you plateau. But
I hear you. It's not. I told you guys we were not afraid of deep cuts, and we also said to each other, what we need in this league is to play against a team that is not a mid-level to losing team, or B, a first-time team. Remember, guys, Late to the Party and Nerds Watch were both first-time teams. So win or loss, good match or no match, those were both teams that did not have a following. Ken Knapsack had a following because he's Ken Knapsack, but Night Sisters was a joke, and Deep Cuts is a team that shouldn't have even been in the tournament. They lost the match. We haven't had a real opponent that people expect anything from yet. So when we play Trek, given the opportunity to beat them, if we can beat Trek, which I fully guarantee we're going to do. It's not a thing that I'm worried about. But from your point of view as guys who are critics, that's something that's going to matter. What I want to know is, do you 3 believe and strike my feelings from the record, because I'll take it. I got thick skin. What's your prediction? Team Action versus Trek.
It depends on which version of Scott Mance shows up, and I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but if Mance can keep it together and fire off like he did in this previous match, then I've got Trek. But if it kind of goes there where each guy is contributing the same and and Mance kind of just loses it for a second, I think you guys can take advantage and move on. I don't think it's going to be particularly easy either way. I think it's going to be a tight match. There are variables there. At this time, if I had to get a gun to my head, I stick with the hot hand. I would take Trek right now.
You take Trek. Okay, Janisch, what do you got?
I'm going to take Action in this one, and it's because we've never seen a performance like this from Mance, that I can remember at least. I don't fully expect that to continue. We've never seen a dominant performance from Jason Inman. We've now seen very good performances out of both you and Andrew. You guys have been pretty consistent. Again, with this drama category in the second round, you showed a lot there. Your 2-pointer in the third round showed a lot. So I'm going to have to take Action, but it's going to be really close. It's going to be a 1-point victory. It's going to come down to the last question. It's going to be one of those types of matches. But I am actually going to take you guys. I'm going to take Trek. I'm sorry, Action.
Janisch, who the fuck is Jason Inman?
Well, hey, maybe you show up to your match, you'll see him, but maybe you dismiss him. I think you'll find out one way or the other, good or bad.
I said in our preview episode that Scott Mance cannot maintain focus to win 4 straight matches necessary to win this tournament. He just had the round of his life in round 1. That is not going to repeat itself against you guys. So I am absolutely going to pick Team Action. I don't need you guys to beat a great team to know what your performance tells me already. If you beat a great team, that's great, but your performance has already won me over. You're performing at a very high level, regardless of whom you play, and plenty of other people have had great performances against bad players or bad teams, and yet we've crowned them prematurely. So there's no reason why we cannot do the same for you, regardless of the strength of your opponent. I am sold at this point.
Thank you. Hey, you know what? Crowning us prematurely is still crowning us. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking us on, as the favorites, 2 out of 3. And, so this was fun. This was fun. I hope you got a taste of what it's like to be a part of Team Action.
As the only person on this panel that actually took you guys to win, it is what it is. Where are them belts?
Yeah, exactly. Where's the belts at? It's a good fucking question. And I'll tell you, at the Spectacular, when we take them from the Patriots and make JTE and what's that guy's name? Snyder, roll around on the ground crying like little bitches, you'll see where the fucking belts are. That's the
I know that I just took Trek with you being so kind to guest on the show, but here's the good thing that's in your favor. I also picked CinemaBlend to get to the final, and they're already gone. So don't worry about any prediction that I have to make. You're good. Don't worry.
I'm just saying, it's nothing personal, fellas, because look, we've all, if I could pick correctly as a smart individual who was going to win the competitive matches in any avenue, I'd be rich. Nobody, expert or not, is able to pick anything. And Schmoedown's pretty random when it comes to the questions you get. So, for me, it's just, I'm glad 2 out of 3 picked us to lose because, it's fuel to the fire. You guys, I'm just telling you, it's like, you're going to see, and I'm not going to hold it. I'm not going to hold it against you, period.
You're welcome for the bulletin board material, but Mr. Bateman Media, you're known for your death-defying stunts, but recently you broke your ankle jumping rooftops. How are you holding up right now?
I'm doing really well. I have to take care of my body, and so I can make sure to give you guys, more incredible stunts. I think people would describe me as the greatest star of my generation, and I'm going to continue that. If you bet against me, you're going to die. Is the bottom line.
In all seriousness, have you been doing the Cruise impression for a while, or was this a Schmoedown invention?
The Cruise impression?
Yeah, was it a Schmoedown thing, or was it a long time thing before it?
When we started the show, Action Movie Anatomy, we used to do a segment called Cage versus Cruise, where we would talk about the lead in the movie. Would it be better played by Tom Cruise or Nicolas Cage? You can find a really funny fake Nicolas Cage auditioning for the role of Gary Oldman in Air Force One audition that we taped. It's from episode 1 of the show, and we did a lot of Cage versus Cruise for a long time. I love Tom Cruise. He's my favorite movie star of all time, and I have there. You guys remember Patrick Fugit, the kid who starred in Almost Famous? He went on to star in Outcast and all these other things. There's a funny interview from last summer where Fugit and I are talking Cruise in an interview, and he claims he has a good Cruise impression. And we have a Cruise off. You can go find that on YouTube somewhere. It's on like a rooftop in San Diego at Comic-Con last year. But I've always described Cruise, and for the record, if anyone's keeping track, he's my number one interview all time I want to get. I have never met him, and I commend him for his aggressive sincerity. That's what I think. If you were to describe Cruise in 2 words, aggressive sincerity really describes what makes him so special. I've just always believed that, like, no one says anything to anyone with the intention that Tom Cruise has. And I don't think I do the best Tom Cruise impression. I know the guy that does the best Tom Cruise impression, but I believe in my impression enough that if I needed to do it for someone on the spot, I think I could make it work. So
you got the angle. You got the angle of a smile down correctly. The way you tilt your head is pretty dead on.
I'm glad you think so. We love Cruise on the show. He's the greatest of all time. So he deserves the tribute.
I have to jump in here real quick. I'm sorry, but I have maybe a conspiracy theory I'd like to run by you. Now,
go ahead.
Now, you guys you jumped into the interview with Trek when they had just come off their victory, and a lot was directed towards Mance, and you said you guys have been wanting to kick Scott Mance's ass since you got into the Schmoedown. Is there in any way a little bit of hostility knowing that Mance has interviewed Tom Cruise before and he's putting up pictures with Tom Cruise? Is that part of this, or am I way off base here?
Nice catch.
I got nothing to worry about with Scott Mance. I got nothing to worry about. No, I'm just kidding. Look, Scott Mance, talented interviewer. He's been in the business a long time. As far as professionally goes, I mean, I've paid a lot of attention to Mance, and I've seen the pictures and all those things. I've had conversations with Mance about Cruise. But when it comes to jealousy, I've been hosting only about 3.5 years. That's been my full career as a host. I've gotten to interview now 2 of my top 10 all time on the list I made when I started. Cruise is obviously at the top of the list, but I will get there. The day I get there, it will be a meaningful interview. And for me, there's no jealousy. It's more like he feels more of a worthy competitor because he's gone there. His caddy is the person who, if you're picking up on any reason that we direct a lot towards him, I mean, look, watch Caddyshack. If Inman wants to get me a Diet Coke, he's welcome to.
Interestingly enough, Ben and I have both interviewed Vince Gilligan, so that's a completely different topic. But Vince is great. He's the best. My last question for you, though, is the Schmoedown. It's a growing sport.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not just a player, you're somewhat of a ground floor investor or stakeholder since it's such a young league. But what is something that you'd love to see added, whether it's tablets for the questions to be read on or more speed round? What is something as a player you would love to see, money aside, time aside? What is something that you want implemented just for the heck of it?
Look, we live in this age where digital media is so infested with these companies that want to sink money into this idea of success. And they often have diminishing returns as they invest in something that has already peaked. What I can say about Schmoedown is that Christian's a genius. It's a brilliant league. He's done an incredible job. He's found the intersection between movie trivia and character-driven stuff. And as we see now that these matches reach 100,000, in a day, 2-3 days, so much faster than they used to, he's found oil. And for my money, what I want is one of these larger companies, these seed companies, to look at it and say, you know what, we need to give these guys $5 million and put them in an arena, whether it's an arena or just a larger space. And we need to bring, an audience. We need to make this something that's traveling, whatever it is. I want to see somebody invest money where you can have an actual audience. If you can have 500 people or 1,000 people watching every match, I think it's such a different environment than having most of just the competitors, their significant others, a few friends in there watching. To me, Schmoedown, Collider does a great job, right? Like Movie Talk's a great show and TV Talk's a great show. I like watching Heroes. Like they've got their bits that are really good. But to me, Schmoedown is that unique, really special show where they have caught lightning in a bottle and they've figured out a way to generate like 100,000 people in 36 hours, 72 hours, paying attention to this very, very, very specific thing. It's not, and they're 45-minute videos. They're not 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 8-minute little sketches. And that's so unique. It is so hard to get those kind of numbers with that kind of consistency. And especially in an environment where it's watched on YouTube, it's not podcasting. And so that's where I just see, when you ask what should be added, I want to see an investor take this thing to the next level. I think that is what this league needs, and this is what this league deserves, and Harloff deserves that. Look at their wrestling connections. There's a clear next level of this that somebody should be smart enough to recognize.
It's only a matter of time. But you mentioned something that I just want to ask real quick. You talked about the audience, the size of the audience. Now, we've heard some players say that they're not intimidated by the lights or the cameras. What intimidates them most is the in-studio audience, when you've got Roca and Merle and Beast or whomever yelling at you and intimidating you and sighing every time you get something wrong. Are you comfortable in front of the in-studio audience? Would you prefer a bigger in-studio audience, or do you like to play with an empty room? What's your preference?
Oh, I mean, I would love it to be a bigger in-studio audience, because I moved to LA in 2009 to be a musician. I had 2 albums out. I was touring and played a lot of live music. And so I know the power of a strong audience and feeding off of a strong audience. It's definitely something that I miss from the days that I played a lot of music. Now, as far as the fearing the in-studio audience, or, fearing the larger audience, like, I guess the reason that it doesn't bother me that those people, when they sigh when I miss questions, is like, those aren't my idols. Like I like those guys. I'm friends with those guys. They're movie critics and we talk movies. But, I'm not saying like I want to be the Bibiani meets Merle of my era. That's not who I want to be. So I like talking movies with my competitors. But when I miss a question, it's more like, okay, you knew that one. I didn't know that one. I know I'm so good at what I do. So for me, it's more than anything, I just love playing, man. Nothing gets me more hopped up than getting up there. And I won't deny it. The moment behind the stage before we go live, yeah, it's the same one it used to be when I played live as a musician. I get a little like, butterfly's the wrong, but heart beating faster, a little faster. I get a little excited every time. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. It means I take this seriously.
Do the Patriots intimidate you at all?
No, not at all. We had JTE on the 3rd or 2nd episode of our show, and we've talked movies plenty of times. I know what he knows. He's got his lapses. Snyder knows a lot. I'm not gonna lie. The Patriots are very good at what they do. You don't defend a title 5 times unless you are. But in terms of really fearing anyone can lose on any given day, and we're good enough to beat them. So we have 3 more matches to win, which, like, I respect my opponents before I play them, and then I shit in the urinal after we beat them. And talk to me in 3 matches from now. That's all I got to say. I know this match was up and down, and I know that some people won't recognize the fact that these guys got their spinner's choice category in round 2 and then lost the game on a 5-pointer in that same category, which to me should be, we slam dunked all over them. That shouldn't even be a question of how much better of a team we are. But people don't recognize that. They don't recognize that, Drew had an uncharacteristically bad match. I had a 7 of 8, and they lost on their best category. Like, to me, this was practically, again, no real personal disrespect to Thad and Aaron, but this was an easy win for us. This is not close. People keep calling it close. It wasn't close. My
goodness. What a tournament matchup here. And you, Ben, you had talked to me, like, we talked off air, and you told me, team action going all the way. And, I said back to you, that's all that matters, is that you believe that.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, you stay confident, you stay excited, and bottom line is we come into that building to win. And when we prepare a gimmick and we study and we get ready, it's to win. It's not to go in there and talk in the post game like we gave it our best and we'll be back later. It's like, right. No, we're going to win. There's no alternative. We'll deal with it if the alternative happens. We're never going to prepare for it. We're not going to consider it. Get out of here.
I just had one last thing in regards to this upcoming Trek action match, Ben, and I just got 4 words for you. Show me the money.
Oh, really? Show me the money. You want us to show you the money? I got you, Jerry.
Show me the money.
You know that's my favorite Tom Cruise movie. Did you know that?
Is it really?
I think it's my 9th favorite movie of all time. I made my top 50 list of favorite films of all time recently, and I think that Cruise in Jerry, I think that's either my 8th or 9th favorite film ever made.
Well, a weird fact about that movie, when I went to go see it, I saw it in the theater. My mom had no idea how the movie started, so I'm sitting right next to my mom as Tom Cruise is getting it on, and that was a very awkward point in my upbringing.
Of course, yeah. They get against the wall there with what's her name?
And the
with
dog's
Preston.
watching. Yeah, and it's just,
John Travolta's wife, whatever her name is.
Kelly Preston.
Kelly Preston.
I was at John Wayne Airport when they were filming it. So how about that?
Oh, snaps.
Well, Ben, as we wind this down, we want to know, I think the people want to know where they can jump on this Team Action bandwagon. Where can they find you? Where can they find more of your work? Anything you want to tell the fans?
I mean, the easiest place to find Team Action is on the Popcorn Talk Network, which I think is like youtube.com/The Popcorn Talk. We have a show we've done now, like I said, for 110 episodes on Wednesdays at 12:30. I think we're moving times pretty soon to later in the day Wednesdays, but it's a podcast and a YouTube show. There's a Facebook fan group that about a month and a half, 2 months ago, two of our fans started called the Action Movie Anatomy fan page. We didn't think it was going to turn into anything, but I think it has about 500 people by now, which it grows about 10 people a day, which is really fun. If you guys want to be a part of just general conversations that we're a part of, you can jump on there, find the show, listen to the show. We cover everything from The Edge to Mission Impossible 3, 4, and 5 to John Wick, Saving Private Ryan, Road to Perdition next week, AMA podcast on Twitter, all that stuff. So that's the easiest place to really find Team Action. Me personally, you can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram. And I'm all over the place, whether it's TV talk or doing AfterBuzz TV after shows. I covered the ESPYs this year for AT&T, so you can find that on Audience Network. There's a lot of different places that I pop up. But when it comes to movies, if you guys want to hear me talk movies, find me on Twitter at Ben Bateman Media and watch Action Movie Anatomy. That is the easiest way by far.
Ben, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. We really appreciate your time.
Fellas, thank you so much. This was a blast. I can't wait till we beat Trek to come back.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
again. Hello, everyone. Your faithful host, Aaron, here. Do you like what you're hearing so far on the rundown? Great. Give us a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. Leave a comment. Join the discussion. Listening via iTunes, please rate and review the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. It helps us out tremendously. It helps us move up and down on the charts. That way more people can listen and more people can get involved. We would really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other shows on SK Plus. On YouTube, there is something different for you every single day. Different shows with different personalities. You can't go wrong. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at SD Rundown and email us anytime. schmoedownrundown@gmail.com. And now back to back to me. All right, guys, we're back from the break. How about Ben Bateman, man? What a guest. What a cool guy to talk to. He was amazing. I hope to have him back real soon. He wants to come back after they defeat Trek, as he said. That's a bold prediction. We'll see how it plays out for him. But be sure to check out Ben at Ben Bateman Media online. Great dude.
Well, before we recap our next match, it's time for the Ward Wing.
This is art, Mr. White.
This week on the Ward Wing, Bryan Ward showed off his official Ultimate Schmoedown Tournament logo via his 6 Degrees in DC Movie News poster. He also used Mad Max Fury Road to play on Robert and Vanessa versus Critically Acclaimed. The genesis of this idea actually started with the Beast as Immortan Joe. It morphed into LTTP's Desert Road to the Tourney. But once again, folks, Bryan Ward continues to make the Schmoedown a better place. Check him out at Bryan E. Ward on Twitter, as well as BryanEWard.com.
All right, guys, so we have 2 matches left to recap. But before we do that, we had, of course, the special guest predictor for the Schmoedown. It was Booker T. And where was he?
Well, Booker was back in a nondescript office, but the quality increased since his last nondescript office shot. Booker's director of photography, as well as his set dresser, chose to accent the nondescript office location with a pink coffee thermos that said Charmel on it. Charmel formerly known as Queen Sharmell, was once a wrestler, valet, and dancer for the likes of WWE, WCW, and TNA Wrestling. She's also Booker T's wife. But as far as this match, Booker chose 6 degrees because of Hakeem Olajuwon's Dream Shake, as well as a reason I couldn't quite understand. He also picked Critically Acclaimed ahead of their match. He did say that Reality of Wrestling can soon be found via Fight TV in September. That was his big announcement that he teased last time. Also, it drives me nuts, guys, how YouTube commenters fail to understand the value of a Hall of Fame wrestler endorsing a wrestling-inspired movie trivia league. Nobody complained about Michael Jordan being on their Wheaties box. Lastly, I loved how he showed his bias for Jay Stable when he called Kalinowski Malinowski, because Mike is clearly a malcontent in Booker's mind. So Turner, do you have any added information about Sharmell, Booker's wife?
No, I'm actually impressed that you knew that. That's well researched. That's very cool. I do understand the Houston reference, as Booker T is a Houston native and is trying to become mayor of that fair city, I do believe. So
could you hear why he chose Hakeem Olajuwon? He gave a reason. I just couldn't understand it.
I'm with you on that. I'm not sure. Didn't have subtitles. Not sure what he was doing, but I love Book every time.
And I checked the subtitles, but it didn't say exactly what he said. So even the subtitles couldn't make out what he said. Frank, any luck with transcribing what Booker T said after Hakeem Olajuwon?
You know, I really just look forward to how he's going to pronounce the competitors' names. That's really what I'm looking for. And he didn't disappoint, as you mentioned, Malinowski, and with the likes of Schneider and a slew of other names. But I did not go back and transcribe. The Hakeem Olajuwon thing I thought was interesting, so I guess I'm going to have to do some more digging on what he was getting at.
Yeah, Sharmell is from Houston as well, I believe. But I love how he thinks that Mike Killer Kalinowski is a malcontent, hence Malinowski. Clever play on words, Booker.
All right, well, let's get into it. Let's talk DC movie news versus Team 6 Degrees. We got some promos here, guys, and Mike Kalinowski said something that I was not expecting when he talked about Batman has killed, Superman is killed. When I get the chance, I will kill too. What? What? I thought he was supposed to be a good guy. What happened here?
Well, he's always had the nickname of the Killer, which I think was a mistake to name him that, since he's one of the best faces in the league. I actually like the name the General for obvious reasons that I won't name here, but I think he's worthy of a more face nickname. If you ask me, he's really not a killer. He's good, don't get me wrong. He kills people in the matches, but he doesn't deserve the killer name, even though it runs in the family, I'm told.
Homicide is just not necessary at any time. Frank, what did you think of this statement? Anything?
I'm very confused as where Kalinowski is going to be at from match to match. He's a nice guy. He's not so nice of a guy. Talking about killing, he's kind of all over the place for me. I like him as a player and as a competitor in the league. He confuses me. Is he really truly a heel?
No, he's a face. Even when he's trying to be a heel.
I'm sorry, I got my words mixed up there. Is he really a face, or is he, as we've said it in the past, a tweener? I've learned that from you, Aaron, just so you know.
I'm loving this. Keep talking about wrestling. Fantastic.
Now hold the phone, Frank Janisch. Mike Kalinowski, even when he tries to be a bit of a heel, even when he tries to be a bit of a tweener, the guy's a total face. He is the Schmoedown's nicest guy, if you will. He plays well. He's a well-behaved man in essence, and I just don't think he warrants a nickname that is in line with a heel. Yes, I know it's a family nickname. His grandfather or his great-grandfather was a Golden Glove boxer with the name Killer. I get all that, but he's not a killer. He is one of the best faces, one of the rising stars of the Schmoedown. So I think he's in line for a nickname change, much like Scott Mance, much like Drew McQueenie. Those guys have had 12 nicknames. I think Burnett's had 12 nicknames. The pizza guy has had 12 nicknames. So let's get Killer Kalinowski. I just said his nickname for some reason. Let's get him a proper nickname, since he is a rising face as well as a star. Aaron, are you loving the gag with Gertler as the mute? I love when he holds the mic out to Gertler and asks him to comment on the match or the potential of it, and he just says nothing. I love the mute Adam Gertler.
Yeah, it's a great bit, and I love that no one else has done it before. No one else that we've seen in the Schmoedown. It's very unique, and it's kind of funny because he has such a great voice. He has a great hosting voice, and it's kind of a nice switch up. I find it very fun.
Very effective. Frank, you think it's effective, the mute gag?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Reminds me of Penn and Teller. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had with that kind of gimmick going on.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Jay Washington here for 6 Degrees. Man, the guy was coming in hot. I feel like he's trying a little too hard to make glorious happen. I feel like he said it a little too much, as we know that the only glorious one is Bobby Roode, but I digress. I did like Stacy with a sucker, calling people suckers. I like that.
That was cool.
Exactly. We had the dismissed. We got it all in that one. What did you think of this pre-match here?
The pre-match was pretty predictable coming from them. This is what they do now. So I wasn't surprised at anything that was said. It's kind of been repeated now for the past couple of times they've shown up. So nothing that was brand new to me, at least.
Brian, what stuck out to you? Anything?
Guys, I was focused on Miss Movie Bucket's t-shirt that said Aaron and Frank and Brian. I love how jealous all of our competitors got in that very moment.
Cool shirt, bro.
Cool shirt, bro.
It is not available anywhere, so it's a one of a kind. So
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. That's right. Yeah.
Not yet.
Well, let's talk about some entrance action. Mike Kalinowski pulling the fake out. We were thinking maybe he's going to do Batman, maybe Batman Beyond. Maybe he comes out in a Batman t-shirt. And it was kind of underwhelming, but I liked it because you don't want to overdo the gimmick. Did you have a problem with Mike not wearing a Batman suit, Brian?
I like the old school Batman theme as well as the old school Batman shirt. I like that he took a break from the ridiculous costumes. And he had a harsh line for Miss Movie Bucket when he said, I save costumes for true competitors. So, yeah, he's a face, but he knows how to dish it back to heels who are trying to dish it to him as well.
What do you think, Frank?
I like when he does it for the inner geekdom. It brings a different vibe aside from a regular team or singles match. And if it's just reserved for inner geekdom, I think it gives that an extra flair. Like it's going to happen, and it makes more sense that it's for an inner geekdom match rather than a general team match.
Let's talk about 6 Degrees coming out. Initially, it was Bad Reputation, of course, a song made famous as walkout music for Ronda Rousey. It's not so popular these days for her, unfortunately. But then they changed it up a little, hip to be square. Do you guys know why that's important?
American Psycho, Huey Lewis and the News. Great bit with Axis taking to the photos of the general as well as the mute. Real Rejects came out with masks on, and they sprayed blood on Chandler and Howard's faces, a la Bale's bloody face in American Psycho. But they were missing the key ingredient of the plastic raincoat, which really ties the costume together. So great entrance. I hope this didn't cost them $6,000, but I love American Psycho. Christian Bale is my favorite actor. Oh, and by the way, Greg Alba, Ryan Wright, that guy's lost a lot of weight, so credit to him.
Yeah, I thought it was something different. Usually they go a little more extravagant, but this was just as effective, if you ask me. I had fun with them watching them take an axe to the faces of their opponents. That was a lot of fun to watch, and it seems like they have some sort of theatrical relationship with the Real Rejects. They've been in a couple of their entrances already now.
Aaron, what was the point you were going to bring up about Huey Lewis and the News?
Well, guys, it's a song so catchy. Most people probably don't listen to the lyrics, but they should. Because it's not about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself.
Oh, man, I'm like a doting dad right now, or a good doting dad right now. You make me so proud, son.
Hey, guys, let's talk about round one, where it was Brienne getting 4 points, Stacy getting 5. On the other side, Adam Gertler, 5 points. Mike Kalinowski getting 8, all 8 questions, plus the bonus. So he had 9. DC leads after 1, 14-9. Kalinowski's off to a fire start here. Brian, what'd you think?
Well, a star is officially born in Mike Kalinowski. Hopefully, Roka's lane clogging will soon free up a spot for a guy like this. I want to see guys like Kalinowski, guys like Beast, guys like Godfather. I want to see them get a path to the title. At this point, Mike is a viable threat in inner geekdom, in teams, as well as singles. So I'm really excited about this guy's future. But like I said, this was a true sign that he's a star. I still can't believe that Gertler did not get the Shawshank Redemption question. I mean, my God, that's something that every Schmoedown player should know. Fun fact, my dad turned down a chance to be a producer on the Shawshank Redemption or Shawshank Redemption. It's something he regrets to this day, but keep in mind that movie was in development hell for like 20 years, so he's not the only one who passed. But great round for DC Movie News and a great cementing of Kalinowski's star.
I guess for a majority of the round, it was, aside from Kalinowski, it's a very average round. But Kalinowski, he threw up that one Hail Mary on the was it Cat Hot Tin Roof? Is that the question I'm thinking of? Where he guessed?
Yeah, Some Like It Hot or
Some Like It Hot. That's what it was.
Yeah.
You don't understand Osgood. I'm a man.
So without that Hail Mary of a guess, he doesn't get a shot at the bonus. I know, Brian, you're saying a star has been born. I'm going to...
A star has officially been confirmed. Like, we've seen signs already, but this perfect round shows that this guy is for real.
Well, he's a legit contender. I don't know how for real he is. I'd like to see how he does on this tournament. Will give me a good indicator how he could do in the singles. I'm not quite at the level that you're at, but I'm getting there. And I've been kind of a staunch opposer to his, I guess, ascension in the Schmoedown. So I'm still being a little leery, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
Look, I'm not one of those guys who holds his record or his match quantity or quality against him because, like I said, Rocha has been clogging the lane to a singles title for a very long time, as well as in teams for that matter. But guys like this, when they show their performance, even if it's against a weaker competitor, that matters. And I'm recognizing it in this case because to get a perfect round, even in a round one of a team match, that's impressive to go along with his Inner Geekdom success. And look, he should have won that Inner Geekdom match against Koi Jean-Dro. He lost in the final round based on that blunder of Puddin. So this guy has shown signs of brilliance already. A star is in the running. A star is in the making. And I think he cemented it with his performance today.
Just to finish up real quick, so Bryan pointed out something during this round where she shouted out that DC Movie News was getting all their strengths. Just to be clear, these are categories that pop up in the first round for everyone. And by you saying that they're getting categories that are their strengths, well, that's because maybe they're just that good of a team. These are the questions that they're good at, these genres, these categories that they're good at. And if you think those are their strengths, well, maybe you should try and turn it into your strength as well.
That's a great point, Frank. But just to add to Kalinowski a bit, Some Like It Hot, Mission to Mars, Runaway Jury, these are deep cuts that he was pulling en route to his 9-point round one, perfect round, of course. So this guy is showing that he's more than just an Inner Geekdom star. Before we get to round two, I just want to point out something that we like to mention on the show just because of competitors listening, as well as the writer of the Schmoedown, Chris Skaliski. Study up on Logan, especially Shane. That's a reference that has popped up in various questions within the Schmoedown, even in 6 months since the film came out. So make sure to have that one really in your queue as far as movies to review and study. Logan, in general, pops up a lot.
Let's hop in round two.
Aaron Turner, nice reference to Preston Waters hopping in a limo in Blank Check.
I want candy. Let's talk about DC Movie News and their turn. They spun crime films. They go 4 of 6 for 7 points. However, 6 Degrees did get 2 1-point steals, 1 B.J. Harrison in The Godfather Part 3 and Michael Caine in The Italian Job. So they're trying to cut. DC Movie News started off strong. Not as good of a round as we probably thought they were going to have here. Frank, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought DC Movie News had a very mediocre second round here, and they went to multiple choice 3 times. They got taken advantage of by 6 Degrees by them getting 2 steals for 2 points, which was a nice job of them trimming that lead that DC Movie News was building. So it looked like going into the second half of the second round, 6 Degrees was in a position to put some real stress on DC Movie News.
Yeah, a 7-point turn out of 12 available points isn't the greatest of round twos, but that's the beauty of getting a perfect round in round one for Kalinowski, is that it makes up for whatever you're lacking in the subsequent round or rounds. But they had some multiple choices. They lost a couple points to steals, but 7 out of 12 in this case after a perfect round when they've already got a 5-point lead, they did just well enough to keep 6 degrees at bay.
Yeah, I thought with the steals that maybe 6 degrees would hang in there, but man, we're going to talk about it right now. It was not to be. As 6 degrees got fantasy sci-fi, they go 2 of 5. Why 5? You'll find out here in a second. For 2 points, the big thing here, a 1-point steal for DC with Dax Shepard and Zathura, a 2-point steal for the Planet of the Apes 9 theatrical release movies. And guys, for the win, DC steals the Arctic Circle and Transformers and KO 6 degrees in the second round, 26-13. Couldn't believe it. What the hell happened?
Yeah, they double spun fantasy sci-fi, and you could see from the first spin that Miss Movie Bucket did not want any part of this category. These are the kind of categories that have driven her nuts since the Schmoedown started, or at least since she joined the Schmoedown. She's been a big lobbyist for category diversification. Yeah, 6D, double spun, fantasy sci-fi. You could see Miss Movie Bucket fuming from the start. These are the kind of categories that she has consistently criticized because she wants more category diversification. She wants musicals and dance films. She wants categories that are not just in the fanboy realm like fantasy sci-fi. But there's a reason she double spun fantasy sci-fi. I'm going to save that rant for a little bit later, but regardless, these were some tough questions. Zathura, Dax Shepard was in Zathura. I don't remember that. Multiple choice, that was stolen by DC. And then Mo from E-Card, who stopped a free villain. That was another impossible question. They had to go to multiple choice there. Apes films, that was an answerable question, but they missed that. That was stolen, of course. And then question 4, Vermithrax Pejorative, multiple choice, Dragon Slayer. So this was not happening at all for 6 degrees. Fantasy sci-fi, it's hard, even if the films are current, but these were all over the spectrum, dating back a couple decades at least. And the one answerable question for them, at least, was the last question, or the last question in this match. The Captain Witwicky explored what first in Transformers? It was stolen by DC Movie News. The answer, Arctic Circle. They confused it, as many people do, with Antarctica. And while I understand that they need to go for multiple choice if they want to extend the match into round 3, they weren't thinking about strategy in this moment. They were down by so many points that I can see why they wouldn't even think about round 3 strategy, is they just want to cut the lead with one of their most answerable questions. They probably felt they knew it, but as many have done before, confusing Antarctica and the Arctic Circle is something that many people do in every walk of life, not just the Schmoedown. So it was ugly. It was definitely ugly, but I got more to say on what caused this, though. Frank?
Yeah, this was an extremely disappointing second round performance. Questions not going to go your way. That happens. It happens to the best of teams, aside from the Patriots, obviously, apparently, being undefeated. The way this happened, the way this knockout transpired, should never have happened.
They were down by so many, though. And like in the betting round, when a team is down, they've got to bet 3 points. So I kind of felt like they had to go for the 2, especially since they had some idea of what the answer is. So even when you're down a bunch of points like they were, you still think it's a bad strategy to go for 2 points? You still think they should go for multiple choice to extend to round 3?
I do. At least give yourself a shot to get to that third round and see what happens in the third round. We just had in the previous match deep cuts. They went over in the third round. It's happened before to other teams as well, have gone over in the third round. You just saw DC Movie News struggle with crime in the second round. Yeah, Kalinowski had a hot hand in the first round, but it didn't translate to the second round. You saw them struggle. Now, if they give themselves a chance to get out of the second round and into the third, who knows what could have happened, but they never gave themselves. That is what it was so disappointing to see, is that essentially I saw them give up on that 5-pointer. They could have went to multiple choice, and I think possibly that had they heard the choices, they could have came up with the Arctic Circle. If they didn't, and it's stolen by DC Movie News, well, now they're down by 12. They go into that 6 question, down 12. You have to obviously go for the 2-pointer without going to multiple choice to force the third round. And just the strategy alone here is what's so disappointing. If Jay Washington is going to spout, they are the next big thing, then they need to have a strategy that in the second round that shows that they are the next big thing. This didn't show that. And that's what was severely disappointing. If you're not going to get the questions in your favor, I understand. You're not going to know every question. But if you cannot play the game strategically well, when it's paramount, then you're never gonna get to the highest mountain. You're never gonna. That's never gonna happen. It just completely bummed me out. The strategy. It really pissed me off.
See, in that moment where you're losing big, I don't think they're thinking about strategy. They had an answerable question. They had to go for it.
That's my point. They need to be thinking long term for the rest of this match to give yourself a shot in the third round.
They were thinking long term in that we've got to get 2 points here if we want to have a chance to win, and for the fact that there was no guarantee they were going to make it out of question 6. There was still a question to go. They still could have been knocked out on question 6. So there was no guarantee.
No, you're right.
On multiple choice, they were going to get to round 3. So I don't necessarily blame them for taking a shot on the one answerable question they had to that point. They got 4 impossible questions to that point. This was the first answerable question. I see why they went for 2. Granted, I don't think they were thinking about strategy. They were dejected. They had to go for it. Plus, there was no guarantee question 6 would take them to round 3. And I don't fault Jay Washington for saying supportive words of his team. I'm not going to take him literally for simply trying to support his stable. That's what managers and mouthpieces do.
No, I don't have a problem with him saying that, but step in as a manager and say, hey, look, if we don't go multiple choice here, you're going to lose on the 5th question here and not even give yourself a shot at the 6th. Sure, it might be a long shot. Sure, they may not get to 2 points, but they will never know. We will never know. And I think that is severely disappointing to know that there was that option. You won't ever know. You won't ever know because you had that option. They didn't use every last option that they could have used to get out of that second round. And that's what makes me mad to watch this kind of play.
Hey, Aaron, it sounds like Frank is mad that he picked 6D on his bracket. So this extra vigor that he's showing is in response to his failed pick, wouldn't you say?
I appreciate the passion. I actually just sat back and enjoyed listening to all of that. That was a blast for me. Like,
For me, they were still going to lose had it gone to round 3. So
you don't know that though. You
they
honestly
do know
don't
that.
know.
They
No.
do. They were going to be down.
They may have had that mentality.
I love this.
But look, you cannot seriously tell me.
Best case scenario, they're
fact.
down 10 going into round 3. Best case scenario, they're down 10 going into round 3.
Hold on.
But there's always the possibility that DC could have went over and they could have went to overtime.
Get out of here.
Is it a long shot? I'm not going to disagree, but you will never know. You had that option.
Like I'm bummed about my bracket too, but I'm not gonna, blame little things and split hairs here to try to make up for my bad picks.
I don't care that I picked that I'm wrong on my pick.
I've never seen you this passionate before, and it just so happens that it coincides with a bad pick on your bracket. You even posted in YouTube and Facebook because you were so upset. So I think this is a bracket blues for Frankie J.
Just call whatever you want to call it to make yourself right in your mind, but
I'm always right in my mind.
Well, obviously.
Guys, wow. Now I have to step in. Now I got to throw in the towel. Jeez, we got to separate you two. But if you're down 10 points in the third round, aren't you knocked out anyway? So
no, because they're going to go first in the third round.
No, what I'm saying is after 2 rounds, if you're down 10, you're KO.
No, because you have 10 points in the third. You have 10 points to earn in the third round. So they have to sweep all 3 points, or all 3 questions for 10 points. And then, DC Movie News would only have to answer their 2-pointer to seal the victory.
Okay. But this is why I host. This is why I don't.
Frank wanted them to have the chance to sweep round 3 while DC would not get an answer correct. So Frank hoped for the most long shot scenario possible, when in reality they probably wouldn't have made it past question 6.
I don't know that for a fact that they could have got, that they didn't, or they would not answer that 6th question. I would just like to have known or have seen them try and answer that 6th question, force into the third round, try and sweep the third round to force DC to answer 1 question in the third round, because that certainly could have happened.
This is how I feel about record-setting matches that are cut short because of knockouts. You never would have known, or you want to know what would have happened had they played a full match. But because of bad teams on the other end, we don't get to see certain outcomes. So this is another example, only there was no record set in this case. But let's again reiterate the fact that DC Movie News knocked out 6D in round 2, 26-13. This is only the second knockout of the season, as Team Clammy Hands knocked out Nerdist earlier this year. But yeah, let's get to a Jen at the wall. Hopefully soon to be Jen at the table. That means it's time for post interviews.
In this one, we had DC Movie News getting a high five from Jen after the KO. Gertler still not talking, and I appreciated Kalinowski coming in there and saying, you know what? We beat 6 Degrees. It's over with. And they want Nerds Watch. And why do they want Nerds Watch? Because he wants to prove not necessarily that Rachel beating him previously was some sort of fluke, because it wasn't. Because he wants to test himself against her in a regular movie trivia match. Not Inner Geekdom, nothing like that. He wants to test himself against one of arguably the best competitors in the league right now. I thought that was really cool. I think that's the way to do it. That's a baby face for you. I enjoyed this. What do you think, Frank?
You know what he's saying? He's saying, I don't have a shot at beating Rachel in Inner Geekdom. I have to try and beat her in a general movie knowledge.
Oh, you saw that too. Okay. All right. Brian, what do you think?
Well, either way, the general has his hands full, because if Nerds Watch loses to Above the Line, he's got to deal with Above the Line. They're obviously a challenge of a team as well. So either way, he's getting challenged. But I like how Miss Movie Bucket came out and said this is the first untainted win for DC Movie News. Of course, this is a shot at the Stinkin' Badges controversy against CinemaBlend. Again, CinemaBlend. I'm saying that because it's so hard to pronounce, CinemaBlend. But one of my favorite moments, if not my favorite moment of the match as a whole, Jen at the Wall asked the following question to Miss Movie Bucket. Are you excited about your match with Clark Wolf? And here is Miss Movie Bucket's answer. To be quite honest, I don't give a fuck. So she was dropping truth. This sounded real. It seemed like she never wanted to play again at this point. That's how despondent and dejected she was. And for someone who wants category diversification, like I've been saying, or category diversity, an easier way of saying that, spinning double fantasy sci-fi, that is something that is going to discourage any player, but especially someone like her, who has been such a huge proponent of more types of categories, not the same ones we've had for a while.
It took me by surprise, because I didn't know if she was playing it up to get heat, or I didn't know if it was real. But now, after like going back and looking at it a couple times, that's about as real as it gets. It's pretty stiff, I would say. But Frank, what did you think here?
I thought it was pretty funny. Brienne pointed out DC Movie News this win is like their first legitimate win, when 6 Degrees has only beaten Scrubs and Has-Beens. So I thought that was kind of funny. In regards to her line about facing off against Clark Wolf, yeah, that seemed pretty real. And in that moment, you just took a really tough loss, and you're going to say pretty much was on your mind because you're heated that you lost in the fashion that you did. And so, yeah, that seemed about the realest thing we've seen out of these post-match interviews in a long time.
It was a good save by Jay Washington, too, because he jumped immediately and he's like, oh, we already got plans for Clark Wolf. We already talked to Clark Wolf. So that was Jay being a decent, or not decent, he was being a great mouthpiece there, and he stepped in and he was like, all right, I got to cover this situation because that was ugly. But Jay was great in this post-match interview. I liked everything that he said. I like when Jen asked him a question, he's like, next question. She started asking again. He's like, no, next question. I like that a lot. I like Jay Washington in this post-match interview. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, he saved the mood. He lightened the mood. And again, that was a real moment from Chandler. That was an absolutely real moment. I want to again credit Jen at the Wall. Jen Serger is doing a fantastic job. She's had 3 of the 4 tournament matches this week. Emma had Friday, so she's gotten more reps. Again, we credit her appearance on this show. We credit her debut on this show, her SK Plus debut. And clearly, the commish saw something that warranted more time on the show, and I hope that leads to Jen at the table. Now, guys, I got to address something. It's very important. I want to address one of the greatest inventions on not only this show, but this entire network. That's BDSM, the Brian Davids spin method. We've barely had a chance to mention it since its inception.
Probably because of the initials.
That's the thing, though. It worked for Howard and Chandler in their last team match. However, there's a reason it didn't work for 6D this time around. They didn't use it. But the reason we haven't had a chance to mention it a lot is because the scenario hasn't popped up. The circumstance has not popped up since it was invented until now. So background for new listeners. BDSM was created in response to a 2 to 3 month trend following the arrival of the new wheel. For whatever reason, there were a ton of repeat second spins, and of those repeat second spins, the vast majority started their second spin on the category they had just landed on via their first spin. So per the Brian Davids spin method, I suggested just moving the ticker once to buck this trend. Now, I keep saying the word trend because it's a word I've always associated with BDSM. When I use the word trend, it acknowledges that the trend BDSM was conceived to counter was fleeting. Simply put, trends come and go. However, some people turn BDSM into this permanent solution when it was only meant to buck a trend, however long that trend lasted. And like I said, the repeat second spins all but dried up once BDSM hit the streets. In the case of Miss Movie Bucket's team, they're not using BDSM as it was intended. They're using BDSM like it's a genie's lamp. They're moving the ticker to the category they wish to receive, when BDSM was always meant to avoid repeating the category you didn't want to spin again, such as fantasy sci-fi. So because 6D used BDSM to fulfill a categorical wish, it worked against them. Hence the repeat of fantasy sci-fi. BDSM took over the Schmoedown, which is why Mark Ellis recently acknowledged my name prior to a spin in Mance and Bibiani's match. However, so many people took BDSM out of the context it was intended for, combating a trend, and mistakenly thought that BDSM was my way of saying that if you move the ticker to the category you wish to receive, you will in fact receive it. However, that was never the case. That was never the purpose of BDSM. It was to combat a trend at the time. So please, folks, listen carefully. I'm working hard here.
Also, one more thing, kids. If you're less than 18 and you're listening to this podcast, first of all, hi. Second of all, if you're going to Google what he was just talking about, BDSM, safe search on. That's all I'm going to say. It's a family show, so don't go up to your mom and say, hey, Mom, I was listening. I'm going to spin this wheel. I'm going to use BDSM. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. I just want to use that as a disclaimer. I don't want phone calls. I'm just saying.
You knew that would happen, though, right? As soon as BDSM hit the streets and swept the nation, all of those scenarios stopped. There were virtually no second spin of the same categories.
All right, guys, we are moving on to our last recap of the week. It is Late to the Party, Robert and Vanessa versus critically acclaimed William Bibiani and Whitney Seibold. What happened here before the match started, Brian?
Well, there was a little bit of kayfabe, and this involved acknowledging the fact that Whitney looks like Harry Ellis from Die Hard. And guys, I want to ask you a quick question. Who was the first Schmoedown fan on record to make the Harry Ellis comparison in regard to Whitney?
I don't know. Who was it?
It was me. It was me.
But didn't you even say that you weren't the first person that came up with that?
People have said it to him outside of the Schmoedown, but as far as Schmoedown fans on record in public, I am the first person to do it on record. Now, Aaron, let me ask you, Tom Dagnino interrupted pre-match to kind of push his commissioner agenda a bit. You're a big Dagnino fan. Thoughts on Dagnino?
I like that Dagnino put it out in the ether, and it is a movement that's online. It's kind of an underground movement, and we've kind of even us ourselves, we've even kind of pushed in on that a little bit. I've kind of backed off it from it now, but yeah, it's always good to see Tom, and I like that he came out to support Team Patriots. Look at the game tape, if you will, and study the opponents since they couldn't be there. Tom's a great manager, and he showed again why.
Yeah, the promos were pretty straightforward. I like that Critically Acclaimed dropped that we're smarter than you. That is their catchphrase. I like that they close every promo with that, as they should. Very wrestling inspired. I'm disappointed that Late to the Party that Robert didn't shave his beard for the Bernie costume. I felt that he should have gone truly authentic and just left the mustache for the Weekend at Bernie's entrance. But regardless, Ricky ran out first to introduce Critically Acclaimed's Mars Attacks entrance, The Beast and Bit Me Seibold. And I've noticed this before, but every time Deep Cuts plays, they follow it up with a lot of visual effects. So Aaron and Thad are really making it up to Christian that they get to play in this league, as they had blasters with laser effects for their entrance. So Good on you, Deep Cuts. Frank, do you have any reaction to any of the team's entrances?
I thought they were fine. It wasn't anything particularly special about it. Sure, the special effects, lasers, that was cool.
Visual
I thought it was... Yes, visual effects, correct. Those are nice and fine entrances.
But last time Deep Cuts played, they made up for it with more visual effects. Again, saying thank you to Christian for letting him get in the game. So they're paying it forward. Aaron, any last thoughts on any of the entrances?
I really like Mars Attacks. I like the movie, and it's always cool to see those kind of alien masks. So I dug it. I still prefer their Jigsaw entrance, though. I think that's pretty awesome. But it was kind of cool to see him switch it up. You got to do that every once in a while.
Were you jarred by the no jumpsuit? Do you think the Beast should always have his jumpsuit?
No, not at all. I think like I said earlier in about the Kalinowski match, like him not wearing the Batman suit, you can't do it every time or it loses its effect or its shine a little bit.
Sure.
So them to switch it up, I thought it was cool, and I like I said, I like Mars Attacks, so I'm always happy to see that kind of alien. Well, in round 1, it was Robert getting 4, Vanessa getting 3 for Late to the Party, and on the Critically Acclaimed side, it was Bibbs and Whitney both 5-5. So Critically Acclaimed led 10-7 after round 1. Frank, what'd you think here?
You know, Whitney and Bibiani took a pretty big dip from their previous performance in round 1, getting 5 points each here. I didn't think I'd see that big of a dip. I didn't really expect either of these players to go perfect, but I didn't expect to see them go 5. Late to the Party, Robert and Vanessa, they were victims of it as well. These teams in animated category, drama, and fantasy sci-fi could not answer the question, which was very surprising to me that not one player could get the question. That was pretty surprising, but it was a pretty average first round from both of these teams, which I didn't think we'd see, at least from one of them.
Frank, you can't fault them for a dip when they're perfect so often. So that's kind of unfair for you to single them out like that. But Critically Acclaimed finally showed they were human in round 1. These were some tough questions. These were some very tough questions on both sides, obviously. And it's shocking that there were 3 universal misses in round 1. I can't remember the last time that happened with 2 good teams involved. But again, overall, the questions in round 1 were very difficult compared to most other matches. And I have a big issue with question 3. Hugh Jackman plays a desperate father looking for his missing daughter in Prisoners, who plays his friend Franklin, whose daughter also went missing. This question did not need to be worded the way it was. Next time, go with in Prisoners, who plays Hugh Jackman's friend Franklin, whose daughter also went missing. So again, because they don't have the luxury of reading these questions, they have to listen. They then have to think of the answer. Questions have to be written in a very straightforward manner. The work is finding the answer, not understanding the question, a question you cannot read in person. So there's no need for all this nonsense about Hugh Jackman when it could be written much more efficiently.
Somehow I knew that this was going to be the question you brought up in round 1. You're the internet's first Villeneuve fan, as you have said.
Thank you for acknowledging that I was the first person to let everybody else know that Denis Villeneuve was a great director, that he was the next guy that you want to pay attention to. He has not proven me wrong. He's made me shine, in fact. But question 6, we had a little callback to Toonland, as JTE would call it. How did Eddie Valiant's brother die via a piano drop? So I like that we had some Schmo's no-show continuity with the Schmoedown. Yeah, wasn't this a tougher round 1 than most round 1s, guys?
Absolutely. These questions definitely were tough. We had mentioned already the 3 categories that both teams went over in. I did not expect to see that, and I can't remember the last time we've seen that happen. We've seen matches where 2 categories have gone over from both teams, but 3, that's pretty rare, if ever.
Yeah, I won't say it was underwhelming. I mean, it's still pretty close, but it was just kind of, all right, well, let's set our expectations a little bit differently because, of course, as we all do, we anoint Critically Acclaimed as this team that's just going to blow through everybody.
I didn't do that.
Okay. Well, Frank was the only person. So
Frank also picked 6 Degrees, though.
And I picked CinemaBlend, so we're all terrible. But yeah, I mean, it showed that they are human, and that was different to see. I didn't expect that from Bibbs and Whitney, but I wasn't off the boat yet. I still think they had a great chance to win.
I just want to point out one more thing about round 1 before we get to round 2, and that's question 4. Tippi Hedren as Melanie Daniels in Hitchcock's The Birds Robert answered Brenda. That was an awfully strange answer by Robert, something he'll explain to us in our cool down segment after the recap.
Well, let's talk about round 2 now, where it was late to the party, getting comedy, going 6 for 6, getting all of them. 12-point round. No steals on the critically acclaimed side. So what do we think here of late to the party in round 2, Brian?
Well, first off, I'm very perturbed by the fact that critically acclaimed deferred to late to the party to spin first. I don't like this strategy whatsoever. In tournament matches where there's pressure, I want to put the pressure on my opponent. I want them to have to chase me. Instead, critically acclaimed had to play from behind. I don't like that strategy one bit. The Beast let Whitney do it. He trusted his new partner, his new to the Schmoedown partner. I just think that was a mistake. Whitney's instincts are trusted by William. That's what he told me directly. But for someone who's not well versed in the Schmoedown strategy of it all, I think that was a mistake to make. Obviously, you can point out mistakes a lot easier in hindsight, but in tournament matches, I always want to have the opponent chasing me, and that is something the Patriots have made a point to do. If you guys listen to our Jeff Snyder recap after his 4th title defense, he said we always want to go first. We want our opponents chasing us.
Yeah, I have to agree on this, what you said, Brian, about the strategy of going first in the second round. I've been saying that for a while as well. I do not like that strategy. You want to accumulate as many points as possible to put the pressure on your opposing team. Even though, yes, they know they have a round to make up ground, it's still very disheartening to see like 20-8. It's very disheartening to see, even though you realistically make up the ground. So with critically acclaimed deferring, I thought it was very peculiar because for one, by letting your opponent go, automatically one category is going to come off the wheel for you. And that could be a favorable category for you. So now you don't have the full wheel at your disposal. Granted, opponent's choice is on there. So I just don't like that strategy. And late to the party, getting all 6 questions correct, it's a hell of a thing to see, just in general. It doesn't matter what team it is. It's a hell of a thing to see a team sweep around like the way they did. Whatever you have to say about questions, what have you, it's still impressive to see.
Now, it almost paid off for critically acclaimed because LTTP spun classics, their weakest category by far.
Yeah.
But of course, I got to spin again. They landed on comedy, but they just missed opponent's choice in the process. So LTTP is clearly charmed. They've had a charmed existence in the Schmoedown so far. And 12-point round, that is a 12-point round. My goodness, that's a perfect round.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that.
That's a perfect round. No multiple choice, no steal opportunities. I'm still weirded out by the fact that there's no bonus. I mean, when you get a perfect round in round 2, it's a big deal. But I'm miffed more so by the fact of how easy these comedy questions were, mainly because they were all from 2000 or later. So that's right in Robert and Vanessa's wheelhouse, and it's no surprise why they succeeded during their turn. And when you look at round 1, those questions were all over the place. So the fact that they got questions from 2000 or later, recent films, that's very strange if you ask me.
I mean, look, if critically acclaimed goes first, they have the opportunity to get that category, get those questions. So it's just the way this round went.
That's another reason why I'm questioning the choice of deferring.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what happened. Critically acclaimed got spinner's choice on their second spin and took Hitchcock. Brian, you have an interesting fact here?
Yeah, I was talking with William, and he said that crime movies has done wrong by him in the past. So, of course, he wanted Hitchcock really bad, but he had extra incentive to get away from crime movies given his past experience with it.
Yeah, it looked like Bibiani was very excited to get Hitchcock. Whitney, I'm not sure. It kind of looked like he was taking it because Bibbs was so excited about it. So, I mean, you got to trust your partner in these situations like they do. These guys have worked together for a long time. It makes sense.
Additionally, while I don't like teams interfering during other teams' gameplay, especially when the latter didn't interfere in theirs, I do appreciate Robert's basketball reference. That was the squeak comment that he made. Whitney followed up with a response to it. In general, I do appreciate Robert dialing back on the long windups in effort to say something witty before his answers as well. It's almost like high-stepping before a touchdown or holding the ball out like Leon Lett before you think you're about to score. So good form from Robert in general.
They went 4 of 6 for 8 points. Late to the Party did get a steal. So after the second round here, Late to the Party leads Critically Acclaimed 20-18. Frank, what'd you think?
Critically Acclaimed should have swept this round, and they didn't. I think parts they got a little ahead of themselves, Bibiani mainly. I was afraid that this might happen. Teams or players get categories they feel super confident in. They can be prone to jump the gun. I think we saw that happen here a couple times, and it ultimately ended up costing them the match, especially on that fifth question that they went to multiple choice that Vanessa was able to steal for the 1 point, which turned out to be the main difference in this match.
Yeah, Frank brings up a great point. When players are overconfident in a category, it can sometimes backfire because they're rushing, much like Emma Fyfe in that Inner Geekdom match where she didn't listen to the rest of the question, and that led to her elimination, even though she would have gotten the Harry Potter question correct. So when you pick your strength, you cannot miss more than one question per the Brian Davids formula for success. Yet Critically Acclaimed missed 2 and had a point stolen. So Hitchcock may have been too cute of a selection if you ask me. We've talked before about players like The Beast and Godfather and how they like to make statements to the rest of the league by willingly taking categories such as classics, 70s, or Hitchcock. But no matter how strong they clearly are in these categories, in this case, it was just a bit too cocky given the tournament environment. In tournament play, you've got to lay up. You've got to play it safe in order to advance. This is a bold move one might take in a title match, but not in round 1 against a decent opponent, even if LTTP doesn't have the strongest classics or Hitchcock acumen. So in the case of question 2, the 12 minutes of music, no dialogue, 124 shots, why not use the clock? Use the clock to your advantage. Use it to your advantage. Instead, they rushed the answer. They both got it wrong. So if they both took their time, one of them could have conferred with the other that it wasn't Psycho.
I've been saying for quite some time that there are teams and players that have a wealth of knowledge, but you also need to be strategically good at this game. That's another part of it. Yes, a major part of it is knowing the answers, but another big part of it is navigating the game itself. In these matches we've seen this week, that has come into play. As a word of caution to other teams out there, figure out how you want to play the game and how you think you should play it best, because that is a big part of this game.
I guarantee you, Critically Acclaimed will not be deferring in round 2 ever again, and I don't think they're going to get cute in matches like this, especially at least not in a non-title match. So this is a bold move you take in title matches, but in round 1 of a tournament, lay up, brothers.
Well, let's talk about the third round here. Let's get to it. Let's get to the end here. Critically Acclaimed starts us off. Whitney missing the 2-point question. We're going to have a discussion about this. It was Jennifer Lawrence as the category. That's got to be a new one. I haven't seen that one yet myself. American Hustle in 2013 with Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper. All right, Brian, I know you got a lot to say about this American Hustle Silver Linings Playbook question. What do you think?
To say the 2013 movie that Jennifer Lawrence starred with Bradley Cooper is incredibly misleading, especially when you consider that Silver Linings Playbook came out just 7 days before 2013. American Hustle was an ensemble piece as Cooper was second billing to Christian Bale, even though Cooper didn't deserve second billing since he was even more of a supporting character in the film, hence his 41 minutes of screen time compared to Amy Adams' 46 minutes of screen time. She was third on the bill. Bale, the top billing, had 60 minutes. Jennifer Lawrence, she was fifth on the bill. She got an and credit. She had only 20 minutes of screen time. So how can you call this a Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper starring movie? It's not. I would have written it as what 2013 film's ensemble cast included Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper? Would you say that David O. Russell's Joy starred Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper? Of course not. He was barely in that film as well. The question was written to deceive you into thinking it was either Serena or Silver Linings Playbook. You wouldn't call Love Actually a Keira Knightley and Liam Neeson movie. You wouldn't refer to 12 Years a Slave as Brad Pitt and Sarah Paulson's movie. So you cannot mislead people into thinking it's a movie with two certain actors as your leads when it's clearly not. Very disappointed in this question's wording.
To be fair, in the case of, I don't think you were pointing at Chris Galiski, but he does not always write these questions. He does get them from other places.
Yes, I realize that fans submit them on occasion. I also realize that he copies and pastes them from certain apps because it's a lot of work to write all these questions. I totally understand that, but certain questions still can be proofed and revised accordingly, especially when they are potentially misleading.
Just want to make that clear. All right, anything to say about American Hustle?
I actually liked the question, but at the moment I did. Hearing Brian's explanation, yeah, it's a bit of a deceiving question. It begs you to pay heavy attention to the question that's being thrown at you, the way it's worded. So I can see that, but at the same time, you got to take your time, or you should try to take your time, listen all the way, because look, you're down in this match. You got to be very careful, and it sounds like an easy question because it's a 2-pointer. You're expecting it to be easy. And it kind of is an easy question. I said Silver Linings Playbook in my mind, and then when he said American Hustle, I was like, oh yeah, that's correct. So I can see it both ways.
This is a big, important match. You cannot deceive people when they cannot read the question. It's a high-pressure situation. Everybody is automatically going to think of Silver Linings Playbook. I thought of Serena as well. But when you make it sound like a starring vehicle for these two actors, when it's not their film. I just proved it with their screen time. That is a really crappy thing to do, in my opinion. Yeah, someone else could have submitted the question, but still, there's an opportunity to proof them. And it's a bummer that Critically Acclaimed had to lose this question and lose this match.
Well, let's talk about the next question, which was answered by Bibbs, which was buttons. Okay, great, fantastic. We go back to Late to the Party here, where it was Vanessa answering Lily James in Baby Driver. Frank, I'm sure you like that one. Back to Critically Acclaimed, where it was Bibbs getting Edward James Olmos in Stand and Deliver. So that really put the pressure on Late to the Party. Robert and Vanessa could not come up. Actually, it was Robert could not come up with sports movies yet again. Ron Shelton, this seems to be their Achilles heel, these sports questions, the Ron Shelton directed films. So now it's down to Late to the Party, the highest pressure situation you could pretty much be in as an underdog in the Ultimate Schmoedown against Critically Acclaimed. And Robert comes through in the clutch. 5 points, 3 seashells, and Demolition Man is what they used instead of toilet paper. I don't really understood how that worked. Never really got explained to me. And Late to the Party defeats Critically Acclaimed 27-26. It was a murder death kill to everybody's brackets out there. And guys, Late to the Party has arrived.
Yeah, at the end of this match, Critically Acclaimed was critically maimed.
Oh, wow.
It was, I mean, look at these 5-pointers. Not a lot of teams or individuals prevail in that kind of situation. Both teams, first Critically Acclaimed answered their 5-pointer. Huge moment. But Late to the Party answered the call, and they got their 5-pointer well. And it just proves to you how good these teams are. And so I was happy to see that it went down to the wire, because I genuinely thought it would go down to the wire, although in my bracket I did pick Critically Acclaimed. But nonetheless, this was a great match and a great ending.
I just want to remind everyone, not in an arrogant way, but I did pick Late to the Party. I said they were going to drub Critically Acclaimed. Critically Acclaimed would get a Razzie for their performance, but I still have issues with these questions. Critically Acclaimed had that deceptively worded 2-pointer. Their 3-pointer was about a film called Coraline, Buttons for Eyes. Robert and Vanessa, their 2-pointer, Lily James and Baby Driver. We just watched that movie like 4 weeks ago at the time of this taping. And that was not worded in a way that could ever confuse anyone. It was clear as day. There's no question about it. Critically Acclaimed, their 5-pointer, Commander Adama in Stand and Deliver. That's a 5-pointer. That is a hard question. It's one of the hardest questions of the match. Late to the Party, tough question. Ron Shelton Sports was not tough to us sports fans, but they've shown, especially in their debut against Team Action, that sports films as well as classic films are their Achilles heels. So that is something that they've got to fix, because opponents right now can exploit those two weaknesses. But late to the party, their 5-pointer to win, Demolition Man, the 3 seashells, that is one of the most quoted lines of dialogue on the planet. It's one of the most meme-worthy quotes as well. Compare that to Stand and Deliver and Coraline? Come on. They had easy questions in round 2 in the comedy category. They were all recent movies, 2000 or later. There was an imbalance as far as the degree of difficulty in round 3. So again, I picked Late to the Party, but even I have issues with how this went down. Critically Acclaimed misplayed certain strategies. They shouldn't have deferred. They should have taken a category that did not involve classic films like Hitchcock. You know, anytime you can pick a category that's fresh in mind, play it safe, lay up. I'm not seeing correlations here that make sense. Demolition Man, 3 seashells, you can't call that a 5-pointer in comparison to Commander Adama in Stand and Deliver. You just can't. So congratulations to Late in the Party, huge upset, but a lot of weird things in this match, especially that awful Jennifer Lawrence question.
I'm happy that Late to the Party won. I mean, it's good for them as representatives of the fans. I'm sure a lot of people were super excited that they won. The only thing that really bums me out about this match is that now Critically Acclaimed is a team that a lot of people had winning, and that's all well and good as well. But I like these guys. I'm big fans of their podcast, and I like hearing them. I like having them around the Schmoedown. And yeah, we'll get them in singles, and that's all well and good. But as a team, which I really think they were starting to come into their own, especially Whitney, we're probably not gonna see them for the rest of the season, and that's a bummer. And of course, that could have easily been rectified by winning. I understand that. But that's the only thing I'm really taking away from it. I'm glad that Late to the Party won. Congratulations. I'm such a big fan of the other guys. It kind of bums me out in a way. And that's all I could take away.
This sounds like how I felt about MODOK not getting an tourney invite when they absolutely deserved a tourney invite if Bottom 10 was invited. So would you want to see a MODOK versus Critically Acclaimed at Spectacular? 2 great entertaining teams just to have as an undercard? Is that something you might be interested in?
Please. Absolutely. I would love that.
I'd definitely sign up for that one, yeah.
Yeah, let's make that happen. Do you guys want to talk about the MFU? A little Critically Acclaimed got a little too eager and overconfident in Hitchcock, and they mocked the 5-point question. 3 seashells.
Turn down my headphones next time.
Well, in the
dogs at one point could hear you. That was, yeah.
Well, in the MFU, Bottom 10 crashed the interview because, of course, everybody knew that was going to happen since Critically Acclaimed was on the stage. And Josh Mocha, he's still acting like a heel, guys, except he's wearing a salmon shirt this time, and he's not wearing a black blazer. So I don't see the difference between this so-called face, between the heel that we used to get. So like I've been saying, guys, you can't tell me he's a face. You have to sell me that he's a face. And so far, the salmon shirt is not selling me that he's a face.
Yeah, I think the only difference here is less yelling. I think that's about it. Other than that, I don't really know.
Well, he comes out yelling, like he wants to yell, but then he remembers, oh, wait, I'm a face. So then he dials down the decibels, and it's not him. That's not who he is. Mike Kalinowski, natural face. That guy, he's as straight as an arrow, whatever that means. I don't mean that in a weird way. I'm just saying, like, that guy is a face for days. That guy, you believe what he's selling as a face. And yet, I'm not buying this Josh Mocha heel stuff. I'm just not. The league was set up to help John Rocha win a title. Ellis won the Ultimate Schmoedown Tournament 6 weeks after he lost to Merle. Rocha gets his shot by default. So the league kept giving Rocha as many opportunities as he needed to finally win. And then as soon as he had to defend it, he lost it right back to Mark Riley, who then lost it to Merle. And who knows if Merle will ever let it go again. But yeah, you can't fault someone when the league has been designed to give the other guy more matches. Bibiani had that record-breaking debut, and then he sat on the shelf for like 6 months. It was only like 3 months, but still, it felt like forever. We all wanted to see him. Even Bibiani was getting impatient. But back to this match, again, LTTP, they're still vulnerable in sports and classics. Those weaknesses will be exploited if they don't fix them. So opponents zero in on those. And I just want to point out something else that Lando Knapsack has been trying to do lately. Fredo Knapsack, he's been trying to shed the fan label from Late to the Party. However, they were sold to the fan base as being the first fan team. There's nothing wrong with being the proxy for fans everywhere. Fans everywhere was written on the scoreboard. That was the purpose of bringing them into the league. Plus, they're not in the industry itself. They're still a fan reaction channel in Arizona at the end of the day. They're not like IGN or CinemaBlend, who has a website that revolves around industry news and coverage. And for me, I would want to be the first fan team or fan proxy / surrogate. I would want that label because it makes my accomplishments even greater whenever I do beat industry vets. So I would not let Fredo Knapsack, try to take away my label as being the first fan team. That just makes my conquest even bigger and better.
After their shocking Ultimate Schmoedown Team Tournament upset, we had a few minutes to cool down with Robert and Vanessa.
Hello there. So that was quite the match with Critically Acclaimed. The funny thing is we've been watching the other matches in the round one portion of the tournament, and man, like, those first round questions are a little bit harder than they usually are, I think.
I think that they were like not there when we were playing in the first match. I mean, I'm actually surprised that they missed a lot as well in the first round.
Yeah, you know what? Going into this match and having everybody miss the first question definitely took a load off for the rest of the match. Like, I was very concerned about, like, a tit for tat, who's going to miss first going through that first round. And the fact that all four of us missed that first question made it so much more stress relieving from there on out.
Yeah, in a way, it set the tone for the rest of the match, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because the crowd kind of got a little unruly in the beginning because we were kind of all over the place when it came to our answers. And it's funny because, like, one of the answers too was a Hitchcock question. And it's funny because, like, I got hung up on a female name. And that's the thing, is like, Hitchcock's first movie, I believe, is like Rebecca, and for some reason I got stuck on Brenda, and it was the only name in my head, and it's like I couldn't even think of any other Hitchcock movie at that moment. I should have gone with something easy like, you know, The Birds or Rear Window or Vertigo, but no, I just got stuck on that girl's name, and it's like not even the right one. And I think even Bibiani was kind of flabbergasted as to what the hell are you talking about. That just shows like how much our nerves were shot in that first round.
Yeah, and then, I mean, coming in the second round and almost getting opponent's choice and landing on comedy, that was a good round.
And that's the thing, is the comedies, we've seen Schmoedown matches where the comedies are definitely all over the place, and sometimes they're ones you know and sometimes they're ones you don't. This one just happened to be ones we all knew. However, when it comes to things we know and Hitchcock, them taking Hitchcock was something that we thought would have done us in.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as they hit Spinner's Choice, we're like, oh, we're done for. And they picked Hitchcock. They go through the round. Basically, they went too fast, and there was that one, as you know, that we stole from them. And funny enough, it happened to be one that I've seen. Like, it's the only Hitchcock movie I've seen. I know, crazy. I haven't even seen Psycho. When that came up and I was listening to the question, it never really dawned on me. To be honest, I wasn't really paying attention to what they were doing. And I was just kind of sitting there because I was like, oh, we're already done. See, like, I was already, like, checking out. I remember listening to the question and then kind of feeling like, wait a minute, I've seen this movie. Like, it sounded familiar, and then they were going through it, and I don't even remember what they picked, and I thought that they picked the right thing, and then when it went to us, I was like, wait. And so that's why I was like, oh, can you repeat? We had to repeat the answer, or the question, or not the question, but the multiple choice answers, and I was like, oh, it's got to be stage fright.
That was pretty much how we stole that question, because it was all Vanessa. I had no clue. I would have just guessed randomly in the dark, but she ended up coming up with Stage Fright, which was a big steal. And apparently the 1 point that definitely won the game for us. So third round, the second that I heard in the film Demolition Man. I couldn't even hold my poker face anymore. Like, I know that movie like the back of my hand. They could have asked anything from Demolition Man, and I would have been able to pull off an answer, I think. So the fact that it was the Three Seashells, to me, a person that has seen that movie more times than Psycho, I think it was an easy 5-pointer. But at the same time, when it came to team action, I think energy drinks is a super easy 5-point question. So, gosh, when I heard Demolition Man, that was just a wave of excitement.
But like you said, it always comes down to whether you've seen the movie or not.
Absolutely.
If you've never seen the movie, you wouldn't have known. You would think, oh, he must have just used, like, toilet paper. Like, people would think it would be a weird question.
But it wasn't, and it was amazing. And you know what? It was by far the most stressful match that we've done out of the two. So, we can't wait to see what happens in the next round 2. Still can't believe it.
I know. I mean, the wheel is really nice to us. And then our 3 questions were pretty decent. They were okay. So, I don't know. We'll see coming into the next match, depending on who we play. It could be either Wolves of Steel or Makuga and whoever his partner is.
The Riddler. I'm settled. It's on the Riddler. So many question marks. Too many questions, Mr. Wayne.
I thought that was some great insight from the two of them. I really did. I like how they talked about the Brenda question in round 1, that odd Brenda answer. Robert is self-aware enough to know that it was a weird answer from him. He explained his reasoning. So I really appreciate that they took the time to add something special to this episode after their momentous upset.
Yeah, absolutely. And one day, maybe physically, we'll have them on the show instead of a pre-recorded bit, but we appreciate it nonetheless.
We get a hologram?
That's only Tupac? All right. All right, guys, before we get out of here, we feel like we need to update you on our brackets, which I think mine's on fire somewhere over here after CinemaBlend. I split the weekend. I went 2 for 2. Of course, CinemaBlend was my big one. They lost. I did have Critically Acclaimed. They also lost. But I did have DC Movie News correct. So I split the weekend. What about you, Brian?
I split as well. It was a rough start to begin the week. I missed the CinemaBlend Trek match. I underestimated a team that was one bad call away from a title. I'm talking about Team Trek, of course. I underestimated our friends at Team Action. Big fan of Ben Bateman Media after his phenomenal debut on this show. So I probably won't pick against them for a while, but I just can't believe I fell into the echo chamber. The echo chamber of everyone saying, oh, well, they've only had success through their best category, action and adventure. There's no way they can carry that success into other categories. And after that great interview that Ben gave us, I believe wholeheartedly that they've got a lot more knowledge than just action and adventure. But I finished the week strong because I picked DC Movie News to beat 6 Degrees. And I'm one of the few who picked the upset of Late to the Party over Critically Acclaimed. So it's 2-2 next week, August 29th. We've got Heroes versus Blofeld's Cat. On August 30th, we've got Top 10 or Bottom 10 versus Real Rejects. On August 31st, we've got Wolves of Steel versus Makuga Anonymous. And September 1st, we've got Nerds Watch versus Above the Line. So that's the updated schedule. It changed a few times, so I felt it was important to update the audience as well. Frank, update us on your bracket.
Well, this week, the first week, didn't go great. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got all 4 wrong, so that's not good at all. I still do have 3 of the final 4 intact. That's only because they didn't play yet. So, yeah, well, hopefully next week goes a little better. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it, though. I mean, it's a glass half empty, glass half full kind of thing. I like your strategy there.
Thanks. I need that. I need that a lot.
You're welcome. I was just trying to be supportive. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. If you're wondering, like, hey, man, where's the previews for next week? Go check out our last episode, Bracketology, because we previewed all of the first round matches. We'll get to previews, of course, when we get to the second rounds and things like that. But for now, please go back and check out last week's bracketology. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, like we said, our brackets are in shambles for the most part. Before we go, our friends over at Take 3, especially Jacob Blunden, he hosts a show on the channel called Watch Along. And this week, he's doing a Lord of the Rings charity watch along. It benefits the Make-A-Wish Foundation. They've got a crowd rise page going on. All you got to do is just tune in on Take 3's YouTube page and watch Lord of the Rings with them and talk about it with other people. I believe Rachel Cushing is going to show up for, I believe, Fellowship of the Ring. I might pop in for the Two Towers. I'm not really sure yet. Maybe I'll pop in for something else. But definitely give them some support. Those guys have always supported us, and we're going to support them. If you need any further information, please contact Jacob himself or the Take 3 Twitter page for more information. All right. Well, of course, you can find me on Twitter at ATTitanium for all that good stuff. Frank, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at FrankieJ29.
Brian Davids, what about you, man?
Find more of me on Twitter at BDF331, as well as my TV film podcast, filmschlubspodcast.com, or wherever podcasts are found. Special thanks once again to Ben Bateman Media of Team Action. The guy crushed his debut on SK+. And I want to give another shout out to Jen Sturger, hashtag Jen at the table. She's doing a great job. She got more reps this week. I really think she's just a great spirit in the Schmoedown, and I cannot wait to see more of her.
I like to just call her best friend of the show, Jen Sturger. But also, guys, same drill for next week as it is right now. Obviously, this is a jam-packed, longer episode, 4 recaps plus an interview/recap with Ben. So next week, probably expect the same thing. It's going to be a little longer. It's going to probably be a little later in the day than you're used to of getting it. That's just the nature of the beast. We are looking for a guest next week. We have somebody in mind. We're not there yet, but we will let you know as soon as possible. But until then, we'll see you next Saturday on SK+. See you.